Of the Garrett County Board of Education to order, and we have the agenda. Didn't print still. So when we do get to the part of approving the agenda, we do have the addition of the budget. Budget request to the Garrett County Commissioners, which will be under continuing business.
It'll be C.
Yeah, that would be C under continuing. So 9C.
What are we calling it?
Budget request to Garrett County Commissioners. Any other additions to the
So it's just the amount.
amount? Yes, we can call it that if you want.
Budget
Requested amount.
requested amount.
Okay. Our next order of business is to actually move to executive session. I have a statement that's prepared for this. I'll just start reading it. Yes, that would be great. So we are, general provisions of Article 3-305 of the Maryland Code allows us to go into executive session, and the reasons for executive session today are to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of employees or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, any personnel matters that affects one or more specific individuals, to consult with our counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter, and to conduct collective bargaining negotiations or consider matters that relate to those negotiations. So today our topics include an update regarding employee misconduct situation, an update regarding those who are retiring and separating from service. Those are under personnel. Then under negotiations would be parameters for negotiating, anticipated healthcare cost, and fiscal year 18 budget planning reconciliation as those relate to negotiated agreements. And a discussion regarding an Open Meetings Act complaint and our response. That's under legal. The reason that these are being in closed session rather than open session, personnel topics, is because they are relate specifically to confidential employee matters that are not appropriate to discuss in open session. The collective bargaining negotiation topics are being considered in closed session because of the very nature of the negotiations process, and the legal advice topics are being considered in closed session because we'll be receiving legal advice from our counsel as it relates to our response, and that's part of our attorney-client privilege matters. Is there a motion to go into executive session for those reasons? So I have a motion from Tom. Is there a second? Second from Monica. It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of moving to executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. We are in executive session.
Now we are.
Okay, we are back in public session, and at this time we have public comment, and we have no public comment at this time. Therefore, we can return to executive session for the reasons we stipulated earlier. Is there a motion to return to executive session?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Sorber. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rinker. So it's been moved and seconded to return to executive session for the reasons stipulated at the beginning of the meeting. Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. We are back to executive session. Reopening the public session. Our first item is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the agenda for this meeting. Need to add two items there under 6B, new business field trip request, and under 9C, fiscal year 2019 local funding request. In addition, it will include the board meeting minutes from our January meetings, professional leave request and negotiation parameters. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been motion and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Consent agenda is approved. So we will move on to recognitions. And it is National School Counseling Week recognition is our first one. And Dr. Swerber has that.
All right.
Happy National School Counseling Week. Whereas school counselors are employed in public and private schools to help students reach their full potential, and whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to career awareness and development, and whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children, and whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society, and whereas comprehensive developmental school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school. Therefore, we do hereby proclaim February 5th through 9th, 2018 as National School Counseling Week. We will come up and be recognized.
We're busy, huh?
Yes.
Dr. Lawver, will you introduce the
Just reading
counselors?
it.
I've asked Dr. Lawver to introduce.
We will. This is Kelly Davis, elementary counselor at Broadford. Tony Galafalli, elementary counselor at Accident and Route 40. Tim Watson, elementary counselor at Crellin and Route Ways. And Don Min, who's our new counselor this year at Broadford and Swan Meadow. Appreciate you.
Well, thanks for coming, and now we all get a picture. How are you? I'm good this way because there's we all know this way. A little more.
There we go. And one more. Thanks.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for all you do. Okay. Thank you all.
As you all know, very much, as guidance counselors. Appreciate it very much.
That's the type of vice president.
Thank you. That was beautiful. We do appreciate our counselors. And now we're going to appreciate school social workers. So it's School Social Work Week, and Mrs. Rinker is going to recognize that.
For that this evening, I believe we have Mrs. Shannon Haley, a school social worker based out of Docklands Elementary. We have Mrs. Mary Van Sickle, school social worker based out of Axon Elementary, and Dr. Phil Lawver, our supervisor of pupil services. The proclamation for National School Social Workers Week. Whereas school social workers in Garrett County, Maryland, and across the nation serve as vital members of the educational team, playing a central role in creating a positive school climate and partnership between the home, school, community to ensure student academic success. Whereas school social workers support the educational, social, and emotional development of all students by decreasing the impact and barriers to academic success. Whereas school social workers participate as specialized contributors at the community, district, state, and national level to promote efforts at improving student academic achievement and personal well-being. Whereas school social workers participate in the development of global citizens by promoting skills for a lifetime and lifelong learning. Whereas school social workers provide interventions to address challenges such as mental health, behavior difficulties, disabilities, crisis response, poverty, bullying, abuse, grief, addiction, and etc. to enable students to achieve their academic goals. Whereas school social workers provide staff development, training, and consultation to school staff and family members on topics impacting students' ability to learn. Whereas school social workers assist families in accessing resources to improve their circumstances and their readiness to learn foundation for their children. Whereas it is fitting that school social workers be recognized for the important role they play in the lives of education of students and their families. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Garrett County Board of Education hereby proclaims March the 5th through the 9th, 2018 as the National School Social Workers Week. And thank you.
And Shannon, is this your first year or second year with us? Second year with us.
Take another. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe good to start with our celebration. If those who are able would please stand, and we'll begin our meeting, continue our meeting with a moment of silence. Ask Cheyenne, our student member, to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, I think it's time to listen to you read for a while. It's time for our closed session summaries.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. The Board of Education met in executive session on Tuesday, January 9th, 2018 at Central Office in the boardroom at 4:07 p.m. under Authority 3-305 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland to discuss the following items. Review of minutes, personnel topics pursuant to 3-305 B1, collective bargaining negotiations topics pursuant to 3-305 B9, legal opinion pursuant to 3-305 B7, and administrative function, which is specifically excluded from the Open Meetings Act by virtue of 3-103 A1I of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland. Tom Woods made a motion to close the meeting, and this was seconded by Charlotte Seabold. Thereafter, the board unanimously voted to close the session with a yay vote from Matthew Paw, Charlotte Seabold, Monica Rinker, and Tom Woods. The closed session began at 4:07 p.m. The board recessed the executive session at 5:35 p.m. The executive session reconvened at 7:44 p.m. The topics discussed and actions taken include the following. Board minutes. The board reviewed the minutes and placed them on the consent agenda for further action in the public session. Personnel topics pursuant to 3-305 B1. The board received professional leave requests and overnight field trip requests from Karen DeVore, Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction Administration. All requests were approved and placed on the consent agenda for further action in the public session. The board received a bus contractor update from Richard Wazlowski, Director of Transportation. This update included a discussion relating to breach of contract, suspension of an individual bus contractor. The board took this matter into consideration but took no action on this information. Collective bargaining negotiation topics pursuant to 3-305 B9. The board received information from Dr. Jane Wilderson, Director of Human Resources, and Allison Schweitzer, Director of Finance, regarding the status of negotiations with GCEA Unit 1 teachers, GCEA Unit 3 support personnel, and GCAFT head custodians and cafeteria managers, and relating to possible salary parameters. The board took this matter under consideration but took no action on the information. The board also received information relating to various healthcare options for the collective bargaining negotiated agreements from Dr. Wilderson and Ms. Schweitzer. The board took this matter under consideration but took no action on this information. Legal opinion pursuant to 3-305B7. The board received legal opinion from Brandon Hoover, board attorney, relating to the legal aspects of budget carryover, including an opinion regarding the role of county government relating to carryover. The board took this matter under consideration but took no action at this meeting. Administrative function. It's 2 pages. The board received administrative function updates from Ms. Barbara Baker, Superintendent of Schools, relating to the topics of student behavior issues and a budget transfer query. No actions were taken by the board on these matters. Matthew Paul made a motion to adjourn the executive session, and Charlotte Siebold seconded the motion. The board unanimously approved adjourning the executive session at 9:40 p.m. with a yay vote from Matthew Paul, Charlotte Siebold, Monica Rinker, and Tom Woods. Board members present included Dr. Nathan Sorber, Vice President and Acting President, board members Ms. Monica Rinker, Mrs. Charlotte Siebold, and Mr. Tom Woods. Mr. Matthew Paul, President, joined the meeting via conference call. Ms. Barbara Baker, Secretary-Treasurer, Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Brandon Hoover, Board Attorney, and Ms. Karen DeVore, Executive Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Administration, were also present for the meeting. Dr. Jane Wilderson, Director of Human Resources, Mrs. Allison Schweitzer, Director of Finance, Mr. Richard Weslowski, Director of Transportation, were present for part of the meeting. Mrs. Karen Brewer, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, was present at the meeting for the purpose of taking minutes.
Thank you. That was lovely.
You're welcome.
And you think we'd give you a break, but now it's time for announcements.
Okay, these are a little easier, thank you. All right, so we have some announcements. February 15th will be our Staff Development Day. Students will be dismissed 3 hours early. February 19th, President's Day, all schools will be closed. February 28th, progress reports for the 3rd grading period. March 9th will be the next Staff Development, students dismissed 3 hours early. March 20th, we will do our presentation on the operating budget to the County Commissioners meeting. And then May 14th, MAVE is having an Open Meetings Act training from 9:30 to 12:30, making your meetings work using parliamentary procedure in the afternoon at the MAVE office in Annapolis.
I think there's a sign-up sheet for those if you're interested in circulating.
Okay. Also, if you would, Mr. Paul, allow me to give a brief update on our efforts of our maintenance department on the flu epidemic. A couple of the board members, and there's been a few members of the public that have asked me what we're doing to ensure that we're keeping as many flu bugs as we can under control. The first thing that we did, Mr. Swift, our director of maintenance, sent an email to all his custodial staff, giving them all of the extra precaution cleaning advice, and also this 2-page guide from the CDC on preventing disease and the spread. And then, in addition to that, he has implemented a special cleaning and disinfecting team to focus on classrooms, restrooms, and other area of the school where it's the greatest student contact. We have one custodian serving the northern area schools, with the first priority being elementary, then middle and high. And then we have another custodian that serves just the southern area schools, same priority. And then we have some special cleaning products that he's using where you leave them on for at least 10 minutes and then rinse the surfaces. So we hope that and really encouraging our families that if their children are sick with the flu to please keep them home. We think that has done a tremendous amount towards keeping the flu bug at bay for this school year. And that's all I have under announcements.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move along to policies and procedures. Mrs. Schweitzer is presenting EHAA, Privacy and Protection of Digital Administrative Data Policy and Procedure.
So I will be presenting 2 policies this evening. EHAA, Privacy and Protection of Digital Administrative Data, and then the JRB, Privacy and Protection of Digital Student Data Policy and Procedure. A little background, the reason that the policy and procedure is under review is because the finance and HR departments recently went through a conversion from our legacy SIM system to a new Tyler system. So therefore, we started to look at the policy and procedure, and we needed to update a couple things. So, first of all, for the policy, if it's okay, I will do both at the same time because they parallel each other.
Yeah, so one is for administrative data and the other is for student data.
Yes.
Okay.
So, in both policies, we are proposing the addition of the statement, the Board of Education expects that all employees will act in a responsible, civil, ethical, and appropriate manner when accessing GCPS administrative data or GCPS student data. That's the only change to the policy. The procedures, the digital administrative data procedure, there were a couple other additions or changes. We did add the same statement in the purpose for the procedure. Under D for procedures for the administrative data, we have revised a couple of the pieces of language. Number 2, upon signing the application of administrative data access, the Director of Finance will review all staff requests for administrative data access. That was a little bit different from previously. However, because of the functionality of our new system, there does need to be one person that oversees that. The appropriate access rights will be granted or denied based upon job position, duties, responsibilities, and expectations. This is a new statement because our new system has the capability to have role-based access, whereas previously it was based upon the individual employee, what their access levels were. So it's a shift in the way that we're thinking about ratcheting down our access. Are there any questions for EHAA?
I have one question. Yes. You said under D procedures 2, it says upon signed application for administrative data access, the Director of Finance will review all staff requests. Who currently overseeing it?
Well, the form went to the HR director, and then it went to the finance director, and then it went on to the IT director.
So 3 people before.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, the way that it will function is that while the Director of Finance will give the authorization, the Director of IT actually does the changes in the system. So we still have that separation of duties.
Okay. Thank you.
Then there is a new application for administrative data access form. That needed to be revised because of our new system. So again, we have that statement at the very top that the Board of Education expects that all individuals will act in a responsible, civil, ethical, and appropriate manner. We do reference the policies and procedures that accompany this, and then the employee would sign it. The employee currently signs the form also, but it doesn't outline the policies as plainly as it does here now. And then our new system, we do assign roles to the individual employee. They receive a functional role, a data role, and a workflow role. And so those roles are already detailed. It's really just the Director of Finance saying that the functional role is principal, the data role would be Crowley Elementary, and then a workflow role would be therein. So.
Any other questions? All right. That will take us down then to GBEE. Dr. Wilson is presenting acceptable and responsible use of technological resources for employees. This is a procedure.
You think your mom did okay?
Good evening. In procedures GBEE, which is the acceptable and responsible use of technology resources for employees, there are minor changes to this policy. The first is that under the definitions of C, deleting the educational purposes, that statement, and actually putting it into a definition so it has more meat. The additional revision would be on the last page of the procedure, and it lists examples of networking use infractions that are prohibited, and it does have a list. Number 3 would be something that will be taken out. Removing, however, at the end of the list, we have a catch-all statement that would encompass some of the other provisions in the list and includes the various labels for unprotected speech in our school settings. So and then and the list and that statement would be posting and viewing content that violates the law of GCPS policies and/or procedures, poses a potential threat to the health and/or safety of students, might reasonably be perceived to advocate school student drugs, alcohol, and/or tobacco use, and so forth. So that is the catch-all statement that would be included. Any questions on that procedure?
Any questions on procedure? So this would be an administrative change, and it would stand its own question. Okay. We are to GBEF, employee use of social media policy and procedure.
On this particular policy and procedure, there are minor changes. However, we have changed the structure of this. In the initial policy, we wanted to make sure we had a clear, defined purpose. So you have a purpose statement as well as a background statement. And that follows suit with all other policies and procedures in our school system. So that's the policy. Is there any questions on the policy?
Questions?
The procedures under employee use of social media, GBEF. The revision would be to add the purpose statement of the social media to mirror what the policy says. Then the next statement under background, remove the statement but add that a more concise background for this procedure, and you can see there the recommended revision. Moving through the policy, or excuse me, procedure, there are minor changes throughout, with like number 7, putting full-time, other than just full, through procedures on page 3, just adding some minor changes. But if you go to the page 4, underneath personal use of social media, adding a statement H, inappropriate content, including messages and pictures which diminish an employee's professionalism or discredits his or her capacity to maintain the respect of students and parents, or that would impair the ability that the employee to serve as a role model for schools is prohibited. And that was based on some recent episodes that we had with people posting stuff on Facebook. So that's why we incorporated that addition to that procedure.
Questions on the procedure?
Yes, one, or clarification or comment, whatever. Under personal use of social media, number 2, under C. I started a web page. I'm the football coach at Southern High School, and I started a web page to promote a football program. I put a picture of my football team on my social page. In theory, according to procedure, I'd have to get permission from every parent of every student to post that picture.
That is correct.
I have a Facebook page. I take a picture of kids running track, and my daughter's on there. My daughter's okay, but it's got some other people on there, and I post it on my Facebook page. I would have to get permission from every parent of every student who's in that picture.
Now, we actually have a statement that our students sign that does give permission for their
Yearbook,
information to be
yearbook,
used.
newspaper,
That is
Christmas
correct.
Day.
So
Yeah.
all students, all parents sign that for our students.
But does it have that picture may be used on a social media page? I don't know if it does or not. I don't know if it explicitly says that by signing this, you realize that
Right.
you could use those pictures on a social media page. Because it's something you hope never happens. But as our procedure states, it's illegal unless we get that permission.
And I will make sure, I will
We'll
circle back to make sure that it is included in a social media aspect.
Yeah, and this is difficult. I mean, it's difficult. The guys trying to do the right thing, promote something, but in fact, we're violating our own policy by doing so.
I will say that a couple of years ago, we actually had we allowed parents to kind of delineate, well, the yearbook was okay, but I preferred no this. We eliminated that
Right.
so that principals and other staff did not have to keep track of, okay, this stack can be this. So when they sign it, I believe it says all public, everything that was public. Mr. Morris is shaking his head.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct. Because
I don't-
when I post pictures on
Right.
social media, it's
Right, we make sure that there are no
schools
opt-out.
have released those and said, yes, they're all fine.
Right.
Because I know there were always some students who would not sign those, or the parents would not.
Exactly, and we know, the principals know, they have a list of those that, it's an opt-out. I believe it's still an opt-out that we.
Well, now, if they don't sign it, that means the student can't have his name on the honor roll list, can't have his name in the football program, can't have the picture in the paper, can't have his picture in the yearbook.
Right, it's all or not, it's all or nothing, right.
I think Cheyenne has a comment.
I know this says like personal social media page. I would think that like someone posted like your example, a coach trying to promote a sport wouldn't be a personal social media page. It would just be like a promotion.
Well, it could be either. You're right.
It's
It could
part
be
of the
that, or
professional.
it could be, I create my own personal website to promote football.
Right.
I'm doing it on my own. I just, I guess I would feel better if the form they sign includes the fact that their pictures may be used on social media sites.
We will double check that.
I think it says all those things.
Mr. Hoover has a comment.
Dr. Bolson, the question that I have, I could imagine that this would be violated inadvertently. What I'm thinking of are the employees who are parents. So if I am, a science teacher and my daughter plays basketball, so I go to the basketball game and she makes a fantastic shot and I snap it on my phone and I post it to Facebook. All the athletic ability that her dad missed out, she's got. And then in the process, I take a picture of 5 more students because, you can't single one person. I feel like that's a technical violation of this, so I don't know if there's some way that we could address this. Definitely, if I'm in the classroom teaching and I'm taking pictures of my students and posting them, I think that's different than when I'm sitting at the basketball game as dad and I get a couple other people. I'm sure that makes it very hard to delineate it in a policy or a procedure, but I don't like technical violations.
Dr. Sorbert.
Since this is our first read, just for next time, I'd like to just make sure that H that we've added under inappropriate content, will I respect the spirit of that it's not so broad that it wouldn't encapsulate things like political speech or something that offended parents, and this is people's personal sites, and inappropriate content, how that is defined, I think is kind of important. Inappropriate is quite a subjective kind of term in an era of which most of our political discourse happens on social media. So I think there's a Pandora's box waiting to be opened if we don't spend a little time looking at age and thinking about adding specificity.
And adding a definition of what that inappropriate content looks like underneath the definitions, correct?
Yeah, I don't want to make anybody blush by giving suggestions. So I think you should have a conversation and think about specificity of inappropriate content.
Other questions or discussion? All right, this is the first read, and it will come back with policy and procedure next month. GBAA, sexual harassment
The
policy.
next one is sexual harassment. There are revisions to the policy and the procedure. As I shared with employees of social media, we changed the format to have that same structure of a purpose, the background, definitions, the policy. So you're going to see several recommendations on this particular policy. Underneath number 2 of the policy, the statement of sexual harassment can be committed by. We wanted to make sure that it was a true understanding that it was by students, employees, and third parties, as well as the other content there. Then in addition to on the policy, eliminating additional forms, but using examples of sexual harassment include but are not limited to, and then you have a list of all the different offenses that sexual harassment could be. Any questions on the policy revisions? So the procedure revisions, this has changed the most. The biggest change is the way that we report sexual harassment. We were out of compliance. This policy was reviewed by our PK law, really to make sure that we were addressing how sexual harassment is reported and how we have witnesses. So we added the Title IX coordinator to comply with the Office of Civil Rights and the Annotated Code of Maryland. Again, you see the purpose, the background, and definitions outlined. Under D, this is the addition, the Title IX coordinator. So the procedure would outline who that coordinator, Title IX coordinator is, which is the Department of Human Resources, Director of Human Resources, and who the complainants file their sexual harassment allegations to. It also outlines the steps for investigation of complaints. It gives the direction of if the administrator or supervisor shall receive that information, that they file that complaint with the Title IX coordinator. There are 2 forms that are attached, Form A and B, that addresses the sexual harassment reporting form and the witness statement form.
I had 2 questions.
Yes.
Okay. My first question is C3, which is under definitions.
Of appeal.
Yes. Apply to a higher court for a reversal of decision of a lower court. I read what appeal talked about, and it's appeal to the superintendent and the board. So I think the wording on that needs to be changed from higher court. I don't think court should be in there, but however we say appeals, how we explain that in other policies. Also, D2B. There is a bracket there between the B and the note that says this is not going to be, this is going to be taken out. Brackets mean taken out. But you don't want that taken out because that's your changes. And then at the bottom, you've got it bracketed. Let's see, there's two problems with the bracketing because you really need that. That's what you're trying to say. Note, if the administrator or immediate supervisor is the alleged harasser, the complaint shall, and then you bracket out notify the director because that's not what you're doing now. You contact the Office of Human Resources. When appropriate, the employees may, take out shall, issue complaints directly to the superintendent. This may be necessary when the Director of Human Resources and employees relation is involved, or the employees feel uncomfortable talking to other administrators. Should an allegation involve the superintendent, the complainant shall notify the Title IX coordinator, who in turn shall notify the president of the Board of Education. That should all be in. So those brackets before note and the bracket after education should be taken off.
You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Wilson, how about D1B? Should that say supervisor of pupil services?
Yes, it should. Are there any other questions with this particular procedure? Then, if you look at Forms A, Form A is a sexual harassment report form. That was actually, in the policy, they were points that were presented, but it wasn't in an actual document. So I took those items and drafted a document. So that will be attached right with this particular policy procedure. And the same as the witness statement. There wasn't an actual form. It was just items that were advised throughout the policy procedure for a person to include in a report, but not an official document. Are there any questions with the documents?
They say it was human resources too.
Thank you. Next, we will move to JEBA, Pre-Kindergarten Enrollment Policy and Procedure. Ms. Crawford.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. If it pleases the board, we would like to make some changes to our pre-kindergarten enrollment policy and procedure. This came about because of House Bill 684, which our governor signed on April 3rd, 2017. We wanted a statement that said that we want a foundation for our pre-K students, and that's what our purpose is that we feel that it's very important that they do have a pre-K program. The rationale behind that is that every child that is 4 years old on September 1st is able to attend a pre-K program as long as they meet the requirements. And we, as Garrett County Public Schools, actually provide a full-day program instead of a half-a-day program, which some of the school systems still do only a half-a-day program. If you look to the definitions and requirements, which are actually come over, the first requirement is that the child is an eligible child whose parent or guardian enrolls the child in a public pre-kindergarten program. An eligible child is a child who is 4 years old on September 1st of the school year in which the parent or legal guardian enrolls the child in a public pre-kindergarten program. An eligible county board means a county board that makes a full-day public pre-kindergarten program available to all eligible children, which we do. Okay. Implementation is that these 4-year-olds will be enrolled in our pre-K program as long as they are 4 by September 1st of that enrollment year, and that's the policy. Is there any question on the policy revision? Any questions? No.
There's a question here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Rinker.
So by changing the wording, then we are in compliance with House Bill 684, correct?
That's correct.
Basically, it's a parent's option to send their child to pre-K. It's still not mandatory by the state.
That's correct. We just have to provide a pre-K program.
Correct. But I do have one question, and I don't know if it should be in here. I know sometimes a pre-K class might be full at their home school, but you can offer them if there's availability at another school. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's part of the procedure.
Okay, I thought I seen it somewhere. That's in the procedure, right? Okay, I thought so. Just make sure we had that in there. Yeah, if I see that, sorry.
Okay.
May I speak again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that is that's something new. I mean, we have it under our new wording. If there are no empty seats available in the home origin school, students will be given a spot in an empty seat in the school nearest to their home school.
That's right.
Yes.
Is it all right if I go on to the procedure?
Yeah, go ahead. Since the question, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, good. So anyway, eligibility again is the local school system can enroll pre-kindergartners that are 4-year-olds on September 1st of the enrollment year. If there are 3-year-old applicants who are economically disadvantaged, we can actually enroll those students, or if they represent a student population that exhibits a lack of readiness and need help there, we can enroll those 3-year-olds. Also, there is an income process that they look at to see that students are eligible based on that. That's COMAR is what that is. It's a regulation. What we did was where it says automatic enrollment criteria, I took that straight from part of COMAR and part of the bill. And instead of listing it as two separate things, automatic enrollment or prioritized enrollment, we're going to delete the prioritized enrollment statement and just make that all automatic, all of those bullets. So there'll actually be 6 bullets there instead of 3. The application period begins February 1st of every school of the current school year. We look at all the registrations, determine if in the process if they're eligible. We try to fill every seat by that requirement first. Any extra seats that are left over, we fill with any other 4-year-old who is requesting a seat. Timely registration helps us to provide the classroom seats at the different schools, which is why we start in February, so that we can have an idea of how to plan for the next upcoming year. The student selection, we are taking out that first section and creating our own that essentially says that any child who wants a seat will receive a seat. And that's what that says by saying that if they don't meet the automatic enrollment criteria, then they will be given the first empty seat in their home origin school. If those seats are full, they may have an empty seat in a school that's closest to them from there. Following the close of the application period, I will review all of those applications and questionnaires to identify those children who are eligible. By March 31st of the school year, they will be notified of an appointment that they will have at the elementary school in April to have official registration. The nurse will be there, school counselors, those folks are there to help out with registration. So, in the event that we don't have all of our vacancies filled, then we're going to try to fill them the best we can with those students that are in our area. So, do you have a question?
Yeah. School bus transportation, this is new. School bus transportation will be offered to the empty seat in the school nearest their home school.
Mm-hmm. And that's if at all possible, we will do that. That's why it's in red, because it isn't completely, that is another discussion that we thought might occur based on numbers. Currently, I don't think that's going to be an issue, to be truthful. With what I see so far with the registrations that have come in since February 1st.
Well, shouldn't we have it now? We are saying absolutely. If we have doubts about that, and we're saying absolutely to
we're saying absolutely too that every 4-year-old is going to go to school. Now that if they get transportation and there's no requirements, I mean, I know there are still requirements, but we're saying we'll take everybody past the required amount too. We're going to.
Well, we have 20 seats in most of pre-K classrooms. So you want to fill those 20 seats first. But if you have a child who's eligible, then we're at 22, say for instance, and there's no more seats in that classroom, then we have to still offer them a seat. And so we do that. As far as the school bus transportation, that was put in there in red, as you can see, because it was something that we felt we should discuss. Plus, we had sent this downstate for a review to see if our new policy and procedure was going to be appropriate. I'm waiting on that response. I haven't received that response, so that is there just to cover that for them to let me know what they think, and then you make that decision as well if you think that's something we should provide. And we can on the southern end a lot easier than on the northern end, truthfully, because if you think about it, Crellin doesn't have a pre-K. There's not space at Crellin for a pre-K, so those children are offered a seat at Yacht Glades or Broadford, and it's a lot easier because it's so close. Whereas if you think about Accident currently has 20 seats, but if there's 25 students that want to sit there, then we have to offer the other 5 either a seat at Friendsville or Grantsville, and that's where it becomes an issue because it's a lot further.
So if the school closest could be a southern school, a northern from to southern. I mean, if you're telling everybody they're going to have a spot
Closest to their home origin school. So if their home origin school was Accident, you wouldn't offer a seat at Broadford.
I think I see what you're saying. I think I see her point. What if their home school has 25 kids? You have to put 5 somewhere else. So what if the school nearest them, say, what if they already had their maximum 20? So then what would you do? Worst case scenario, if it would happen, what would you do?
We would have to offer the next closest school.
Which might be Southern. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Is that what you're saying?
If you did step 1 and it
Unless you want to clarify in that.
If you want us to clarify that, we can work on that, and before you determine. I can just say that I've already looked at several of the numbers currently. That I don't believe is going to be an issue. But unless our enrollment would suddenly raise in a huge amount, economic development brings in a factory, and we have a lot of new people moving to the county, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Well, I mean, I would like for it to be an issue. That would be
I would
fine.
too. It would be wonderful, but currently it's not.
I think I'm worried about safeguards as far as.
I think we can add if possible, or if
at all
possible. And did you look at any other counties, or when you sent this to MSDE, did they provide any guidance there?
They have not.
Okay.
It's been seen by 2 different
So
departments
minimum,
there, and they have not responded. The one responded, they wanted us to look with another group, and so we've done that, and we haven't heard that response yet.
Okay, so at minimum, we would add if possible.
And the procedure part is where you would like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Monica.
I have one more thing also on that, and I'm thinking maybe we should add some more wording just for clarification. Under what she was just reading, the next paragraph, the program primarily targets 4-year-old children, but under certain circumstances, 3-year-old children who qualify based on the pre-kindergarten enrollment policy, student eligibility may be considered, which is good, but should we say, like, after a certain date or something? Because I know the idea is for people to enroll the pre-K February, March, correct? But sometimes you don't have parents that enroll till maybe August when school's about to start. So how does that?
We can't do that. We can't tell them that they can't.
But I mean, it always.
May I?
Yes.
Three-year-olds are enrolled based on need,
Right.
based on a delay. If
Right.
a student has is at risk, okay.
Like they
And
might have an
almost,
IEP.
not exclusively, but almost exclusively, we work with Ms. Rabel's department, and we have already identified those children through
Long
infants and
before.
toddlers way before they're 3 years old. So generally, the only children that qualify for the 3-year-old to be placed in a pre-kindergarten are students that are, that exhibit
Already
a delay.
identified.
So that would be at any time. We wouldn't
Right.
put a parameter on when they can apply.
But as a parent reading that, I might not understand that. Like, I didn't get that from this sentence until you made clarification.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
what I'm getting at. Maybe
But I
we
think
make-
It's clarified earlier in the
Yeah.
policy. No, actually, it's up above in section A.
Okay.
The local school system or qualified vendor may establish a pre-kindergarten program enrolling 3-year-old applicants, you see that there?
Yes.
Who are from economically disadvantaged or homeless families, or who represent a student population that exhibits a lack of school readiness, which would be the identified person or child
Correct.
by Ms. Rabel.
And I do see,
Department.
maybe we need to put, it says based on pre-kindergarten enrollment policy, comma, student eligibility, and have that. We need to maybe put a little bit of wording in reference to, student eligibility.
A, is
Yes,
that what
yes,
you're
I think maybe that would make it more clear.
Okay.
Other questions, comments?
Just one penny that might just be a typo in there,
Okay.
whenever you're ready.
Okay.
You ready? It's B under household income. Second sentence, should that say initial eligibility instead of initially eligibility?
Yeah.
Initial eligibility then is determined.
Yes.
Where, okay. You're in
Second
section
sentence under B, yeah.
Student selection.
No,
No, I have
under
this.
household income and enrollment criterion.
I have this probably. I'll share it with you.
You'll show it to
Yeah.
Okay.
Charlotte?
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Okay, I'm still hung up on that, well, B.
Initial eligibility.
If we're removing all of the criteria for being in the 4-year-old, we're saying everybody is going to be able to go, okay? But then household income enrollment criterion. Okay, is this going to only be used when we're deciding who we bring in first? Because you're saying you're going to bring everybody in. So the criterion is for the people you're bringing first. So you would bring the 4-year-olds that meet the criterion, right? And then you would bring 3-year-olds after that, or would you bring the 4-year-olds that have not been able to, come in the past?
It would be the 4-year-olds that were not income eligible. The 3-year-olds only come if they have been early identified and there's a need based on that. And quite honestly, by law, you have to give them that seat. So even if you have a full house at 20 and you need that seat to be 21 for that 3-year-old, you have to give it to them. That's the law. So.
Okay, I was just trying to get in my head how you, because I know when we worked on this before, when this came up, when we first started taking the 3-year-olds and those type of things, we worked on this for a long time to try to make sure that everyone was covered. So I'm just trying to figure it out, how you're going to select and how you're going to get everybody in, and who's going to have to go to another school.
The ones who, you have 20 seats. If 15 of them are income eligible and you don't have any more people, then there will only be 15.
Right.
But if you have 15 that are income eligible and there's 5 that aren't income eligible and there are 5 seats open, then you put those 5 children in those seats. Now, if you have 10 and there's only 5 seats, then the first 5 get those empty seats, and the other 5 are given an opportunity to go to the school nearest their home origin school.
Okay, if there are seats there.
if there are seats there.
What do we do with them if there's not?
Well, to be truthful, that really hasn't happened a whole lot in the recent past.
With the
Oftentimes, we
pre-K,
give
with the pre-K
parents
expansion
opportunity.
grant, with the
Right.
pre-K expansion grant, we've been able to put pre-Ks, additional pre-Ks in that have really helped to mitigate that waiting list and those people that didn't get any slot.
Right.
We've been able to add several pre-Ks using those funds.
We have one on the northern and one on the southern.
But we've closed Crellin, so.
Well, that was, we didn't normally have a pre-K at
Right.
Crowley, and it just so happened that it was a low enrollment year, and the teacher offered to have a split classroom, and so we said, sure, if you're willing to do that, because it was an extremely low enrollment year at Crowley for kindergarten.
Currently, we have over 25 seats throughout the system available if someone wanted to enroll their child in pre-K today. It's 3 here, 4 there, 2 here, 5, but we do have availability, and we have, as Ms. Baker said, when we added the pre-K expansion classrooms, we significantly increased by 60 seats our number of pre-K offerings, and we have not been full since we added
We
these.
currently have 21 empty seats, that if we had people that came to us today, we could put them in, but we don't. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
And I support from the transportation that you might be eligible for school A, right? And school B might be closer to school A, but where you reside within the zone, it might be closer to actually attend school C. So from a cost-effective and time-sensitive issue for transportation, I'd rather have transport from the house to the closest as opposed from the school place. I support the way that's written. So that's me.
All right. This is the first review. It's coming back next month.
Mr. President, point of order.
Yes.
I feel like there's people that are just dying to get into our meeting that don't have seating.
Yeah.
Maybe we could see about getting seats,
That's fine.
get some seats so whoever's trying to get in.
Sure.
Seems to be the hottest show in town.
That's good.
You didn't know we had stuff.
Thank you, Ms.
May I be excused?
Yeah, I think we're good for now. So just for coming back, I'm going to move to the public comment section now. So we'll move there. Yeah, will you check and see if there's any public comment?
I just saw some people.
There's 3 or 4 from them.
There's not a lot.
I think there's lots of them.
Does there some tickets that can come in? They just need to come in. Sorry. Let's check and see how.
There were people sitting in those seats though. They just
Evan gave up his seat. He's going to be home.
I think 3 or 4 from 5.
All right. We are getting organized here.
Connie, just making sure you invited all of these folks.
Welcome. So, public comment. During this time, we are pleased to receive comments and ideas from the public pertaining to our policies, procedures, and practices. We ask the comments be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per individual unless otherwise considered by the board president. There will be no discussion or action taken at this meeting, but they may be considered at a future meeting. Issues that are specific to individual employees should be referred to the immediate supervisor for appropriate consideration and review. Rude, slanderous, or threatening remarks or other behavior that is disruptive or interferes with the order of the meeting is not prohibited. And we have Evan West signed up. Welcome, sir.
Mr. President, Superintendent Baker, members of the board, and staff, appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you this evening. I guess I knew I wouldn't need my chair for very long. So, I wrote on the topic that I wish to speak on tonight that it had to do with budget/legislative items. Primarily what I wanted to address tonight has to do with how you formulate your parameters with relationship to bargaining. And without getting into the specifics of bargaining, I would say that, as one of your stated goals in your strategic plan based on the RISE initiative, you've been pretty specific and explicit about the fact that there's a need to value what comes across in your SWOT analysis as the #1 strength of this system, which is its staff and employees. There is no clearer, better way to show the staff and employees of this system that you bargain with, and even those that you don't, that you value them than through how you bargain and through what priorities you set and what parameters you set in bargaining. Some of them are related to issues that will bear a cost in your budget, and some of them are not. Some of them are as simple as acknowledging that through what's bargained in the collective bargaining agreement, that people's basic job security, their basic rights, their basic ability to function and do that job, which is one of the most important jobs that I can imagine, is guaranteed. And that people that work for this system are going to get a fair hearing when they have concerns, issues, or when there are other matters that need to be brought to the front of the elected board. I will divulge one bit of information that came from our bargaining surveys recently. It's very broad, general information without getting into too much specific detail. We asked about working conditions. One of the overwhelming responses that we got back with respect to working conditions was that there's a palpable fear of retribution in both bargaining units. It's one of the reasons why when I come and speak on folks' behalf, it's part of my job is to help, be that spokesperson, to be that voice, because there are folks that feel like if they were to clearly dissent, and I won't say from the positions of this board specifically, but from something that might be considered unpopular, there might be some ramification for them. There has been the statement made that that may be largely perception, but what I would say is that for most people, perception is their reality, irrespective of what that's based on. So I'd ask you to consider that as well as you hear comments from members of GCEA, as you receive information from members of GCEA. I'd also like you to consider that these are the folks that work most closely with our students on a day-to-day basis. They are the ones that have the most public face. They're the ones that deal with every imaginable aspect of what it means to truly educate a child. The last thing I want to say, which is related to your budget, but not specifically, is that when I came and spoke in front of you with respect to the RISE presentation, I mentioned that there are going to be opportunities in the near future for us to potentially collaborate on making sure that resources at the state level are available. One of them is presenting itself currently in the General Assembly, which is not something that we expected. We're calling it Fix the Fund. Basically what it is a bill that would require a constitutional amendment vote, a ballot referendum in November that would take casino gambling funds, which are now put into the Education Trust Fund, and place them into a constitutionally protected lockbox. As it stands right now, the General Assembly and the governor, when he drafts his budget, can raid the Education Trust Fund in order to balance budgets, in order to fund other priorities. It happened under the previous governor, Governor O'Malley, and it's happened under Larry Hogan, so it's not a partisan issue. This referendum, if it were passed in November, would put that funding into a very strictly prescribed lockbox. It would say that the money that comes from casino gambling over and above a certain amount would have to go directly into K through 12 education. That would be money that would come into your budget conceivably next school year. So it's something that if we can get that fund fixed now, would be very beneficial going into the next school year. To that end, on March the 19th, MSEA is holding a rally on Lawyers Mall in Annapolis. We're calling it the Fix the Fund rally, and there will be members of our association that will be going down. We invite the general public to come with us. We know it's a haul. We know it takes a long time to get there and a long time to get back, but it's definitely worth it. And if you want to come, we can figure out a way to get you there, and we'll feed you too. So, at any rate, appreciate your time, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. So this time, I think we'll come back up to policies in a moment. Let's do the STARS program update. Just to clarify, there was no further public comment. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Of course, you know me, Heather Rabel, Supervisor of Special Education, and with us we have, of course, Penny Proudfoot, Director of Elementary Education, and this is Dr. Kate Mitchum from California University of Pennsylvania, who is a licensed behavioral analyst in not only West Virginia but also in the state of Maryland, which is hard to come by. So she has, we've collaborated with her for the building of STARS, and we thought it would be a good opportunity to give you an overview so far of how our pilot program is running. And what we'll do is we'll start off with kind of the slide that we went over with you in June when we first presented the pilot program to you, and then be able to give you some data on that.
Okay, just to go back to where we were, in year one, which this is currently year one, we wanted to start a program at Accent Elementary, which we have done, to bring in students pre-K through second grade with a maximum of 7 students. A part of that program would be that we would have family engagement and coaching for if a child's able to return, coaching for those teachers, coaching for the parents, and we'll talk about a little bit about that later on. It has been modeled after an evidence-based program. When we first began, we did not have the aspect of therapy, and since that beginning and since it's been put in place, we have been able to add group therapy by bringing in the health department with parent permission, of course. And so one time a week they receive group therapy, which I think is a benefit. We also have had all elementary instructional assistants trained in safety care, which is a prevention training in September. We had all elementary CPI teams been trained in safety care. As a part of that, we required the elementary principals to be a part of that team, and they were trained. Mrs. DeVore and myself were trained as well. There was 2 reasons for this. One, so that if we were called by a parent, we could explain it and understand what it meant. And also, when we were in the buildings, we could also, if we had to see it in action, we would know if it was being completed properly. So that's why we were trained as well.
And we also, our BCBA cohort program, that we also started to build with the STARS grant. We have 4 current employees, and they finished their first semester course, and they have already started their second one. And that will be, they will finish up next year. They are required to do 1,500 hours of supervision. Sorry if I'm taking
No, that's fine.
things. And then they will sit for the board. And our goal will be to have 4 BCBAs on staff in Garrett County, which would be pretty remarkable.
So the BCBA cohort, so this is a 2-year program, and we have two folks in the southern, well, actually 2 people at Yacht Blades in the program, and a behavior support teacher at Broadford who works around the elementary program, and then a school psychologist, she's based out of Grantsville, and then the school psychologist who is at the northern end. And as part of their supervision, as part of their programming, they're working on specific projects to support behavior programming throughout the county. So as they grow in their skills, we're hoping to infuse some of the things that we're doing in the STAR program, but school-wide. At Yacht Blades, they are working on functional communication, providing supports for students with autism. So we're kind of expanded a little bit beyond working with kids with behavior problems to work with kids with autism. I should put my glasses on. Looking at increasing academic learning time, engagement, and participation. So a lot of behavior analysis is collecting data, so we're looking at improving the data collection and analysis throughout the district. How can we do a better job of collecting data and then looking at those data and improving things? And a lot of the use of visual supports and social stories, choice boards.
so that we can get kids to make better choices and to do some more self-management and kind of, really increase academic learning time. The behavior support teacher has been working on improving functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans, and looking at the transfer of skills beyond that initial teaching so that we don't just get them back in the classroom and working well, but we look at how can they become independent and have generalization plans so that even without supports they can do, they can become independent without the teacher. Sorry, it's going really fast.
Really quick.
Yeah, it did. We'll go back a little bit. We're also looking at the middle and high school. I know that a focus for Garrett County is going to be PBIS, which is school-wide positive behavior supports. And so Dr. Martz has been looking at both what we're already doing and how we can improve what we're already doing, and then so how we can take some of those lessons learned and expand it across the county. So we have some data. Oh, I think this is you.
So we wanted to give you a little bit over the students that we're serving, and when we were putting this together, it's very hard to give you information because of the small population without breaking confidentiality. So I'm going to give my best to give you an overview of the students we've been supporting without breaking confidentiality. We have so far this school year provided support to 6 students. 3 of those students started the year in the STARS program. The first student transitioned back to the home school of origin in November. The second one transitioned back to the home school in December. And we currently have 4 students in the STAR program ranging from grades pre-K through 2nd grade. And I have to just give a little bit of kudos to our transportation director sitting over there, who has, we've had some lessons learned. It hasn't all been wonderful in STARS, we'll be honest, but there have been some challenges, but our transportation director, Rich, has been, very supportive of the program and busing our students. And also, Dr. Damon back there has just taken the students in our STARS program have really taken to Dr. Damon, and he has been a tremendous role model for our staff in the STARS program. As well as just a wonderful mentor to our students. So I'm really glad that you're here, and I get to tell everyone how much we appreciate you. So thank you. Sometimes we have to get the kids out of this class because we use him as a reward, actually. So he is wonderful.
He earns.
Kids want to earn time with Dr. Damon, so thank you.
And just to update you again a little bit, the number of babies born drug exposed at Garrett County Regional Medical Center as of 1/18/18 were 16. As of 1/18/18, we have had 45 referrals to the infant and toddler program. So that's birth to 4 now. And the number of referrals just seem to be larger and larger.
Yes, go ahead.
But the sad thing is not all of the people that live here in Garrett County have their babies here in Garrett County, right? Some are Allegheny, Preston,
and that's why
Whiteham,
these are just Garrett County Regional Medical Center referrals.
Right, and these might not even be some of our...
These are our kids.
Oh, these are ones that will go here? Okay.
These are our referrals to our infant and sadly. Okay. And there has been 2 more since I've created this slide. So they are just Garrett County babies. Okay. So some good data. When we looked last year and when we met, we looked. We had mentioned to you that we have been making a lot of team calls, which means some sort of communication is made in the school that there is a crisis and that the CPI team needs to go to that. So last year, as of 1/23/17, so I wanted to give you the same time frame. So last year, from the start of the year until January 23rd, we had 33 team calls, which means teachers leaving their classrooms, a disruption in the learning environment. So far, between
August, the first day of school in August, and January 23rd, we have had 7 team calls. So that is a 21% decrease in team calls. So I think that's exciting data to look at. As far as our nonviolent physical intervention, which has been a concern of ours, last year during that same time frame, we made 6 restraints on 5 different students, and so far this year we've had 4 restraints on 3 different students. So we're making appropriate team calls.
Yes.
So I understand you said when there's a team call, the CPI team needs to go. Can you explain who's the CPI
So that's our
team?
safety care team, and that would be, it must be a principal, and then it's up to 4 staff members that are in their building every day. So we are not including our itinerant staff in that. So our smaller schools must have at least 3 trained. So, and we put some different processes in place as far as the principal is the one now making those team calls. So they are the ones taking ownership of the situation and deciding if we do need a team call. Obviously, we're using a lot of those preventative techniques that we have learned in safety care. So, I mean, we have a bunch of different things that we have put into place.
So what we're talking about now is for all schools,
Correct.
not just
All
the
schools.
STARS program
Correct.
at Accent. Okay.
Correct, yes. So those 4 restraints, I'm not necessarily going to say happened at STARS, but
Right, but I mean,
correct, throughout the entire county.
The CPI team, there's one at all schools. You're saying.
Yes, every school has a team.
So just to clarify there, prior to this year, it was a CPI team. Starting this year, it was a safety care team at the elementary level.
Yes, and so part of what we did, part of the safety care training, part of the difference I think between CPI and safety care training is there is an emphasis on the preventative strategies that you can use to diffuse, prevent, de-escalate before you get to that need to, put hands on. And a discussion of what really does need, so the goal is really not to have to put hands on kids. The goal is to prevent that from occurring in the first place. If you look at this next one, it says sure versus no. So one of our strategies, kids who act out a little or who have challenging behavior, one of the things that we have to work with them on is, being compliant and instead of always telling us no, but sure, instead of yes, it's like giving them a replacement behavior. Sure, hey, let's get going, because we want to try and be enthusiastic and have our students want to work and want to do things. And for many of the students we work with, kind of getting them to embrace the idea that learning is engaging and hey, let's go. Sure. This has been a replacement behavior we teach. And you'll see that initially with one of our kiddos, the red certainly outnumbers the blue. The red is no, or telling us no, that's not going to happen. But you'll notice the next time, look, hey, we have lots more blues. Suddenly sure becomes a much more, the word occurs more frequently. Yes, hey, it looks better. And actually, if you look at the next slide, you'll see towards the end, this is just before this student transition, it became the only word he used. It was great. This was a wonderful word. Sure, all the time. All the time, we didn't get any no's at all. So the next slide is just a summary slide, and you can actually see over months. So when he first came in September, clearly there was really quite a lot of non-compliance. But over time, apart from a little blip towards the end of October, we had a nice trend, a huge increase in compliance and in agreeable behavior and doing the right thing, making good choices. And so, yeah.
We also have provided service to a student that has been pretty aggressive. And so wanted to give you a picture of where we are with teaching appropriate peer interactions, because our goal is obviously to get them back to their home school. You cannot do that if you have aggressive behaviors and poor ability to interact with your peers. So we've been really working on that with this student, and as you can see over time, that the student has decreased his aggressive behaviors. So this student is still currently in our program, but we are very pleased that the peer interaction has increased and the physical aggression has decreased.
What would be the process to return one of those two students back to STARS?
Return them back from, so say they leave STARS. Okay, so we've had that. We've been in a situation where the honeymoon phase happens. Of course, when we go to transition a student back, their home school comes to STARS. We set up a transition plan, and then our STARS staff, at least one STARS staff, goes also with the student, and we fade that support. So say things go really well, and in a couple of weeks things aren't going as well. We do not immediately bring the child back to STARS. We have our STARS team head back to the school where the student is. And then it might be an issue where they struggle in music class, in just music class. So then we can help, provide that support to the music teacher. We can look in the data to see, is there somewhere that we need to provide additional professional development? So we have been not quick at all to return a child once we felt that the data supported the child has met their behavioral goals and demonstrated it over an extended period of time. It isn't just, a week of great data, because we have one student, we just celebrated a month victory, we achieved a goal, and now things aren't going so well. So, we really do look at that.
Yeah. Yes.
So, what you're saying then, do you almost need one staff per student? Because if they leave the school and they go back to homeschool, then you need a staff to go with that child. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, we usually use our interns. The interns that we've partnered with the university. So usually one of those staff members will head to the school and support them.
During the transition.
During the transition.
Yeah. But then they might be called back. That's what I was trying to understand. If you're pulling a staff from the STARS program to go back to the homeschool, then the staff.
And we are staffed well enough in STARS that we are able to do that.
Yeah.
Because remember, and I didn't put this on the presentation, but we have a full-time duly certified teacher. We have an assistant that's actually certified in elementary education, and then we have 2 interns in there. So, really, we have the ability to do that.
And so the teacher and the 2 interns are all also BCBA students, so they're quite far along in the BCBA program. They're actually getting ready to take the exam, so they're kind of at the end of their second year.
Well, and I should say, if we know that's going to happen, I'm at STARS, or Dr. Mitchum is at STARS, or Miss Proudfoot, or Mr. Bohr. One of us will definitely be in the area supporting it too.
Okay, so I think. Appropriate. Yeah, appropriate. Okay, appropriate versus inappropriate breaks. So we have another student who it has been challenging to get this student to actually work then play, not work then play, to actually do anything, to do anything at all. And so one of our goals has been to encourage the student and to teach the student, you can earn breaks by doing work. And so you'll notice that at least initially there were lots of inappropriate breaks, which means that the student just did whatever the student wanted to. And that had been the problem that had got the student into the program, that the student did whatever. But you'll notice that now, as you'll see, we've developed a behavior support plan, and we have been using a lot of instruction and a lot of reinforcement for when then, and for doing some self-monitoring and the charting and the recording. So recording, I won't say he or she, this student. And so now we're seeing much more work, much more productivity, and also just recently, the last month or so, much more independent work, which has been our goal, is working towards actual increased productivity, increased completion of work independently, and which has been is really good for this one student, increased performance. Because this was not,
Sets their own goals.
Sets their own goals,
Every day.
setting their own goals each
That's
day,
pretty
and
awesome.
is now asking for work, which initially, for a long time, no work at all, no work. And so now this has been a long time coming, but it's been really good. So. Because then you can earn a little break. You earn a little break when, but now there's huge amounts of work being done in order to earn a little break. Whereas before it was a big break, and yes, it's flipped.
And we don't only just track one behavior per kid, obviously, but this was just to give you a little bit of a summary of the different types of behaviors and the ongoing data collection that we are doing in there, and some of the progress that we've made. The other component that we have of our STARS is our monthly family nights. And this is a time where families come and we can collaborate, we can provide coaching, we can celebrate the students' successes. And when I did take these pictures, they knew I was going to use them, so I want to make that clear. And you can't actually see anyone's face in there except my son's, I think. So he's been, my 6-year-old has been heavily involved also in these nights. But what we do is we try to work at, we have a student that really struggles at Walmart with the family, and it is a disaster to get the child to Walmart. So we, help write a social story for the parent that they can implement before they go into Walmart and read with the child. So really what we've done in the classroom, we've tried to make it useful in the home too, and we tailor it for that, for their house. Yeah. So our next one is February 26th. And that's at Axon Elementary, and we started at 4 o'clock. If anyone's interested in checking it out, we feed our families, and we just have a nice evening of positiveness.
How long does that usually go till?
It usually, 6.
Yeah. And so one of the things we're going to do at this one is like a make and take. Visual, because one of the things that's been really helpful for all of the students, or almost all of the students, have been picture cards or visual supports, visual schedules, and so because we can make them easily at school, or we have been making them. We just take photos on our phones and print them out and make things. We're actually going to make those visual schedules with the parents. For that routine that is the most challenging, for the parent to use and so that the student can tell, the student works with us and tells us before we ever do the difficult routine, okay, here's what I'm going to do, and they read the visual cue part, so the student can then do that, teach it to the parent, before they go home, and then take it with them. And bring some consistency. So, and that's, helpful and comes from family safety care. That's a little tip from that, so they can do that, but maybe Little Walmart one.
Do most of them, are they able to come to your family nice and?
Yeah.
That's good.
They bring the whole family. So we have lots of kids. So that's why we thought the visual would be good, because there's usually a lot of other kids around. So, so we can do it, even if we don't do it for the student, we can do it for the student with his or her siblings.
Yeah, just a comment and one quick question. So I hope you're very happy with these numbers. This is exciting early pilot data, and I think it's what we're hoping. I think we all feel we have this really big, challenging issue in front of us, and we've been excited for a while in looking at innovative solutions to deal with this in a proactive way, as opposed to kind of put our hand up and deal with some of the after effects and repercussions. And so I appreciate the data-driven nature, and what we're seeing, I think, is really positive. So I commend you all I continue to commend you on this effort. One thing I think we're all going to want to assess on this with this pilot as well, as we think about scaling up, is kind of the organizational dynamics. You've gotten good information on what's been happening in the STARS program. Can you speak a little bit? We got some of it with transportation, but there were some challenges there, but can you talk about integrating it into the host school and any lessons that we've learned in embedding it in the school, working with the staff in the school broadly, the principal, the organizational dynamic?
So if you remember, when we decided we were going to build something, I took a team with me to different places around the state. And Dave Yoder, who was the principal at Accent at that time, was right there with me. Okay? So Dave leaves this summer and moves to a different school, and Jessica Frost is principal. So here we go. Here's STARS, and Mrs. DeBoer comes on board. So now I have 2 new team members. That's great. And then Jess, of course, has to leave. So that's been a challenge. That has been absolutely a challenge, because Dave had been, talked to his staff. They knew he was going to look at these programs. I think that was all pretty well communicated. And then we kind of switched leadership roles, and even though our staff was there on opening day, I think, yes, we could have done things a little differently as far as with the change in leadership, maybe been more maybe we should have presented an entire presentation instead of, this is our STARS program, you know what I mean? We could have done that a little differently.
I wasn't even looking for, I wasn't even making critique. I was just, that's something that's going to be interesting to all of us as well, of how that's integrated into that community and what lessons we learn at an organizational level, as well as just in the program. Because it's the building, it's transportation, in addition to
we've had challenges.
Yeah, so how we think about that would be important.
We've addressed them though.
And that's why I really, with Dr. Damon being here, I mean, he has definitely been an advocate. And, until you're a teacher with a student in your classroom like that, you're not quite sure what some of the behaviors are that happen in there.
Thanks, man.
Yes.
Currently, part of it's being funded through grant money, isn't that?
All of it, correct.
Okay. How much longer does that go? Do we know, or is it just every year you have to reapply?
Correct. So our special education grants they'll run until September, but we've used pass-through funds for our teachers. We have partnered with elementary education and braided funds with their grants. So yes, we have already written a 3-year plan for STARS, where we will be able to fund it. through grants.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you all for coming.
I just really,
Yeah.
I just first of all really want to thank Dr. Mitchum for being here. Dr. Mitchum has been not even in the STARS before the STARS program, has been such a great partner with our school system. 15 years maybe
19.
at least.
We're on year 19.
19. Okay.
I love Garrett County.
I should have asked. 19 years. I certainly want to thank you very much for your role in this.
Right.
And as you can see, we're collecting a tremendous amount of data that will really help us, as Dr. Sorber said, in moving forward on our second and third year of the plan. So I really want to thank you for being here. Definitely want to make sure to thank Ms. Raybold and Ms. Proudfoot as well.
It's
both of you.
great to work. No, listen, this
Right.
is working with Garrett County feeds my soul and reminds me why I do what I do. I would not be still in higher ed at all if I didn't do this. Because this is why we do what we do. And these guys remind me every day. And the students in Garrett, I love the students in Garrett County. I love the teachers. And they remind me every day why I chose this career, and they know the teachers know. They know that I do. This gives me great joy.
Thank you, and we work as a team. So
Because,
thank
yes,
you to both
it does.
of you as
And,
well,
yeah.
and Mrs. DeVore for her role coming on
And always
board.
has to. It's
Also want to thank.
Yeah.
I know we've thanked Dr. Damon, but it's been some growing pains, you would say, for your entire staff.
It's been an interesting transition for
Yes.
a lot of people.
So if you would, please send along our thanks to the entire staff of Axton Elementary and Mr. Wilderson as your acting principal as well. I've met with him several times about the STARS program, and he's been very welcoming and helpful to the program as well. But make sure you thank your teachers
They're very supportive of that program as well. So they've really integrated well into our environment, and the staff have really accepted their program and their staff as well. So
well, we do
made them feel like part of our team also, which has been
And
helpful
that's
to
because
everyone.
of your leadership.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yes.
Thank you. We try. We're in that together.
Yeah, that's right. And we're all there for the kids. I mean,
That's right.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, we just want kids to be successful, and we want to teach them and give them the skills that they need to be successful. So, right? That's
Thank you.
everybody's goal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This time we'll move to, just because we want to move all over, number 9, continuing business. Let's look at the 2018-19 school calendar. We'll come back.
Yes, he seems to be quite relaxed.
Give him a gavel. Hey, I'm making
He's got it all under control.
He's got it.
It's like church, you don't get to make any decision.
The first thing I'd like to share with you is the revision, the memo that you received about parent conferences, okay? So at the 2018-19 school calendar committee meeting, all the members agreed for the recommendation for parent conferences to be held on 2 separate evenings at the end of the first term for both elementary and secondary schools, as well as 2 separate evenings for elementary at the end of the second term, and for elementary at the end of the second term, which would be the end of the semester, and for the third term for secondary students, okay? So that was the agreement, that was the vote, everybody agreed on that, and from there, it was brought to my attention by our UniServe director, Evan West, that in 2014-15, the board agreed to schedule parent conferences on a day without students to avoid a violation of Article 3A1 of the Unit 1 negotiated agreement. So that would not extend the duty day for Unit 1 employees beyond 7.6 hours and the work week beyond 38 hours. With that said, the administration at the central office recommends for parent conferences during the 2018-19 school year for pre-Labor Day to be November the 5th, Friday, March 29th, or for the post-Labor Day to be Monday, November 12th, or Friday, April the 5th. So that's the revision that I wanted to clarify from the proposed calendars. So last month at the January board meeting, I reminded the board of the October 11th, 2016 Executive Order 0101216. The Governor Hogan signed requiring all pre-K-12 public schools in Maryland to open schools for their students' attendance no later than Tuesday immediately following Labor Day and shall end no later than June 15th. Furthermore, that local boards of education may apply for a waiver of the requirements set forth in the executive order. As I shared last month, to be eligible for a waiver, the local board must demonstrate that it has met all requirements for at least one compelling justification and has conducted at least one public meeting at which the waiver application was considered and approved. GCPS would qualify for the compelling justification 3B emergency school closing. Eligible local school systems are those that have closed 10 days during any two of the last 5 because of natural disasters, civil disasters, or severe weather conditions. So just some data for you. Starting from 2012, 2013, we missed 14 days. 2013, 14, 20 days. 2014, 15, 15 days. 2015, 16, 4 days. 2016, 17, 6 days. And to date, 2017-18 school year, we've missed 7. The timeline for submission for the application must be made before March 31st, 2018. Decisions regarding waiver requests will be made to the state board immediately following the receipt of the application. For example, if a waiver is received on February 28th, then that would go to the March state board meeting. Public comments have been reviewed by all board members during the period of January 10th, 2018 through February 8th, 2018. The 2018-19 calendar committee recommended a pre-Labor Day start due to the following reasons. 1, to maximize instruction time for all students. Provide the best opportunity to meet the 180-day requirement based on COMAR. Allows for more instructional time to be complete prior to the beginning of inclement weather, which would provide more consistent and uninterrupted instructional time. It would allow for more instructional time for seniors prior to graduation. Help students to better prepare to meet the state and national testing requirements, and allows more flexibility to build makeup days within the calendar. This evening, the 2018-19 calendar committee is recommending that the board take action on the 2018-19 school calendar.
Okay. So I think we'll go through this with some of the components, and then if there's certain things that we need to address as we go through. But we would start then with the start date. Is there a motion to approve a start date?
You mean the pre versus post?
Yeah.
I'll make the motion that we accept the pre-Labor Day calendar as presented by the committee.
Okay, a motion for the pre-Labor Day start date. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. So motion by Tom, second by Nate, and discussion.
One of the concerns that I have, and I'll just throw out a possible solution and see perhaps what some of you think. When you use an 8 o'clock to 3:30 day for parent conferences, basically what you're saying to a parent is, if I have a job, I'm going to have to some way get out of that job to come to a parent conference. Okay, I got to take a day off. I got to work with my boss. I got to do something to do that. All the years that I worked, we always did them after school, so it became, pretty easy for people to come. What would the thoughts be of making that a flex start day, where you started at noon and you worked till 7:30, so that those parents that work till 4 o'clock would have 3.5 hours to get to?
For the last 2 school years, our parent conferences have been 11 to 7. So they've been a sliding scale.
Okay.
And we have adjusted based on if there's any event. For example, in November, this past fall, we slid it back so the times, because there was a Northern Southern football game. You know, so we
we are
have,
present.
that is correct.
Good.
That is correct.
Good, very good.
Yes. I think one of my concerns is with the we are doing graduation on Memorial Day weekend, and I know that hasn't, in the past, that's been something we tried to not do, is ask people to give up their holiday, Memorial Day or whatever for graduation. So that's one of the concerns that I have with that. And also, I think that the survey that we got did find that the pre and post were almost the same, within one. So there are a lot of different opinions out there.
Yeah, I'll just say, I empathize with the comments of folks within the context of this legislation who have had concerns about, the effect of a pre-labor day start on various economic outcomes. As I still look at this and, think about this issue and, the reason the compelling justifications were put in there, if you are believing that we're going to have winters like we've had, that these are going to continue to repeat themselves, which I'm choosing to make that assumption, then I can't find an educational justification for moving, not seeking that exception because of the possibility of days and where we might have to make things up to get everything in by June 15th. So, I do empathize with those economic concerns of the community, but we live in a county where, as we've seen this year, we have to take off a lot of days, and by putting that June 15th end date, there's a lot of different scenarios one could imagine of where we would have to make things up. So I support the pre-Labor Day start.
Okay. I have one other concern. I'd like to voice, if that's okay.
Yeah. No, I'm just, so my thought, I'm just making sure, we're going to do the start date and then we'll look at other components if it's.
It's okay. Yeah, start date's fine.
So, so then, but you can go ahead and voice it and then we can,
Well, it has to do, and I know when we had the initial meeting of the committee, the 3 half days at the end of school were put there because of final exams. We said no final exams any longer, so therefore we need those 3 half days of school. In retrospect and rethinking that, the half days do have some value for teachers. They truly do. In that there are many things that you have to do at the end of school to get ready to close the school down. I'm sure from kindergarten to high school, it's all different, but everybody has certain things that they do. I would suspect, having been married to a kindergarten teacher for all those years, that there are a lot more in kindergarten than there was in the high school that needed to be done. I would not be opposed to revisiting that. And I just think those half days are of value to teachers. They truly are.
Okay. So this would be just for the start date. Yeah.
I have several questions, but I didn't know if.
Yeah.
I know sometimes in the past we
What I'm
did
gonna do is
like
go through
month
the
by
other
month
components.
or like.
Yeah, so
I
we'll go
don't
through the
know.
components. So we'll go start date first.
Okay.
And then we'll hit the others. And so that would be open. Yeah. So let's take a vote then. Motion for this is start date pre-Labor Day of August 27th. And so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, passes 3-1, so August 27th is the start date for schools. Okay, now we'll open it up to other amendments on the calendar. So feel free if you have other amendments to the pre-Labor Day calendar as it stands. Yes.
I had a couple, but one of them was, and I've looked back, I've got calendars like from 2002, 2003, and so on, is our parent conference, the second one. It is scheduled for March. Well, I mean, we had feedback, some think that's good, some think that maybe it should be earlier. Well, I was looking at some things I had here. In 2007, we did have it in April, but in 2003, we had it January 31st. In 2008, we had it January 28th and February 4th. So, like, what is the reason why we've moved it later?
It depends on the quarter. So, because we usually have the first parent conference after first term, okay? And then we've had it at the end of third term, okay? But there have been some times where elementary has had it in the middle, but we can have that flexibility when we have it after school. So you can have that flexibility. But for example now, because we really tried to think about, okay, how can we honor our negotiated agreement without extending the time? But if you would have like school for elementary for third term, but not second term, because you're trying to add that day in, that adds to more days off, if that makes any sense.
Well, I mean, I think these were in the evening. For example, 2008.
Yes.
When we had, the first one was November 5th and 12th, and then it was January 28th, February 4th, and that was for all elementary, middle, and Northern High. Now, Southern High had it that year, April 7th and 14th. So I guess my question, the first question is parent conferences, is it more valuable to the teachers if, you know, you have your first conference, and then, like in November, you miss the second semester, then like what it shows is doing it like the third quarter semester, you don't call it. But if we did it earlier, like we did before January and February, would that make more of an impact if a student had things they need to work on? Like, would it be more important as a parent standpoint to address it? Yes.
It's a kind of a convoluted answer. The reason it's convoluted, it's more beneficial, I think, for elementary. But when you go to a 4-period day, you just started. You just started a new series of classes.
It was
it was to accommodate Southern High School is what it was.
But now
they're on the same one.
Right.
But in 2008, it was to accommodate the needs of
It was they either just started or, you know, then so there was a whole population of parents and students that high school teachers did not get an opportunity to meet with because they were either meeting a brand new group or they didn't come in. Right. But this gave them the opportunity to meet with a group the first semester and a group the second semester.
But we probably have more of a turnout with elementary participating in conferences versus middle school and high school, too.
Much greater turnout.
Mr. President, I was having more to say, but I see Mrs. Proudfoot had a comment, and I think Mr. Morris might have had something. I
was just trying to help Dr. Wilson remember the semester change for high school, which is why that occurred.
Right, I was just going to say, we were looking at the pre-fall block schedules.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any proposed amendments?
I'd like to propose an amendment that the last 3 days of school be half days.
Okay. So the last 3 days of school would be half days. That would make it, under this calendar, would be, let's see, so that would be the 28th, 29th, and 30th.
2 or 3 hours. Previously, they were 2 hours.
Yeah, it's 3 hour early dismissals.
Okay.
I think it's what it has been, isn't it?
Well, it used to be 2, and then it went to 3.
It's really 2. For scheduling.
That's a day, isn't it? Yeah, it's a day.
2.
Is it 3 or 2?
Yeah. 2.
It has been.
I'll ask him what the question is.
Right, it had been 2. But when we went with 1, then we said the last one would be a 3 hour.
Yeah, I understand, but is that problematic with anything? in terms of instructional time?
Scheduling, those are the only days that are 2-hour early dismissals. So it's not a schedule that's really conducive to
Consistent with what we're doing.
consistent with the rest of the year. It's just like, oh, it's the last 3 days and now we're dismissing 2 hours early. Typically, they're used to either a regular schedule, a 2-hour late, or a 3-hour early.
And as I recall, the 2-hour was developed because of the 2-hour tests given in the Block 4 schedules. So you need 4 hours to get 2 tests. So then you need lunch, so you get out 2 hours. Now, if we're not giving those tests, or at least not mandating those tests, where you have the opportunity to give them, I don't see the 3 hours.
The reason we liked the full days was that it's easier to follow a regular schedule than it is to follow any kind of abbreviated schedule. And in losing those 3 hours, or in losing those last 3 days, you have fewer days in the second semester of courses than you do in the first semester. Typically, our snow days come out of the second semester, typically, and you're ending, like if you're a high school teacher, you're ending your first semester on a half a day. Or no, you're not. You're just ending your first semester on a full day. You don't have those days.
It's just a transition.
Yeah.
For the high schools. Just
Yeah,
when you go
but
into
you don't have any
the new schedule.
Yeah, and you still have, as a high school teacher, you still have a lot of things to do to finish up one semester and get ready for another semester. You still have a lot of things to do, and that was one of the rationale too for it's just a smoother day.
So to clarify the motion, 3-hour early dismissal, May 28, 29, and 30. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded, and now we'll have discussion on that.
I think
Go ahead, Charlotte.
who made the motion?
I did. Tom made the motion.
Okay.
No, I needed some clarification. Go with Charlotte.
I think the 3-hour dismissal started with the staff development. So we'd have 2 hours of staff development was not long enough, so we went to 3-hour dismissal so we could do staff development. Used to, everything was 2-hour delay, not 3-hour delays. So the 2-hour, it seemed like to me the 2-hour would be better because we're not really doing staff development. The teachers are actually working in their rooms. And also I remember some of them asked for 2 days instead of the 3 that we were actually that we have had in the past because of the fact. Seems like that would be a fair you give back 2
Compromise.
2 instead of the whole 3, and then that would give some to for staff, for the chance to have the student in the class for a longer period of time for the days that were lost during that time.
Would you like to propose an amendment?
Can I have clarification before she does that on what are the days? What are the exact days that are
28,
20,
as a half
29th
day?
and 30th.
Correct.
3-hour early dismissal is the motion.
But the 28th is already a 3-hour early dismissal. So there's no change to the 28th.
It'd be the 30th.
No, it's actually
Then this is incorrect.
If you look at this one, I'm looking at this one. That's easier
On
to
the
read.
bottom of this, it's 30. It's not correct.
Okay, it's this one that's correct.
That's the correct.
And that's why,
Yeah, on the bottom of this one, it has the calendar, the last 3 days are not correct.
Yeah,
I think it would be helpful if I look at the correct ones.
So what is the correct?
the correct dates are it's Tuesday the 28th,
29,
Wednesday the
30th,
29th, and Thursday the 30th.
correct.
So it's
Because
wrong.
they already have off. Yeah,
No, it's right on this, right here.
that is correct. 28, 29, 30.
Okay. the
Thank you for the
correct.
clarification.
He's got it right.
So 30 is already, so in this.
30 is already a half day, yes.
And,
3 hour.
And Mr. Wood's motion is to add the 29th and the 28th.
Yeah, so
to turn them into half days.
3 hour early dismissal.
3 hours or dismissal. We don't have to make up those 3 hours anywhere else. Those 6 hours, it's just a matter of.
But I did
Basically, we're reverting back to what we've been doing for the last 10 years.
Well, no, we were doing 2.
Yeah, well, you're right. We were doing
The last 3 days.
But the last 3
Yes.
days, I guess, is what.
Right. I think if you look at other school systems, I look to see for it as this 3 hour delay, sending them home 3 hours early, 3 hour dismissals. That's very rare. Usually it's 2, if that much, like hour 45 and things like that. The longest I did see, I think maybe Allegheny started the 3 hour dismissal also. But I think when we talk about the importance of them being in school, that I think we ought to try to keep them there as much as we can. But we did give up to the 3 hour to have staff development, at least have 3 hours to be able to do what they needed to do. But whether we need 3 hour dismissals other days, I don't think so.
May I say something?
Yes.
Just, each school has bell schedules to follow. And so we have 3 hour early dismissals like the day before Thanksgiving, the day before winter break. So you have to have a 3 hour early dismissal bell schedule. And in this case, and it was only the last 3 days, those were the only times we ever did a 2 hour early dismissal, except for possible inclement weather. But so then you had to have you have to have the regular bell schedule, the 2 hour delay schedule. Then a couple years ago, we developed a 3 hour delay schedule. We had the 3 hour early dismissal schedule for those days that are built into the calendar, and then this adds another bell schedule. It's just a little confusing at the building level.
Cheyenne?
Since previously we've done 3 2 hour early dismissals, that's 6 hours. And maybe in the interest, like as a compromise, do 2 days of 3 hour early dismissals, keep the same number of hours, also accommodating the normal 3 hour early dismissals. And
I'll defer to Miss Vanderbilt University.
Not yet.
Hopefully. I think it's a good compromise. I mean, I just know, in thinking back, it's hectic at the end of the year for a teacher, and I understand that. It truly is. If you're going to do final exams, and you're going to do those final exams, you got to grade them, you got to get them ready, you got to get your grades down, you got to get your room cleaned up, you got to get end of the year things done, and I'm sure and that's just from the high school. I'm sure in the elementary level there's even more than that. So let me re-amend my amendment.
Rescind your original.
I'm rescinding it.
Yeah, now make another one.
I'd like to make an amendment change that we, on the 29th and 30th of May, that we have 3 hour early outs.
Okay, 29th and 30th, 3 hour early dismissal. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. Okay, now we can discuss that. Sounds like we've discussed it enough. So we will take a vote. All those in favor of May 29th and 30th being 3 hour early dismissals, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. It passes. So we have 2 half days. Other amendments to the calendar.
I just have somewhat sort of questions again. When I go back and look over the years, like now when we have parent conference, it's no school full day. In order for conferences to be scheduled, it used to be when we had it, and it would say parent conferences, it would say professional day / staff development. Like, and we don't have it there now. Why does it, what's the...
I'm not sure. Well, again, remember what Mr. Woods was sharing. there have been times where the high school or the middle school, because of the turnout, just as you alluded to earlier, having the first conference, the second one they didn't have a large number of turnouts, so they would turn it into a professional development day or staff development for the high schools. Correct, Mr. Woods?
And that was
So
actually
that's-
before we had the half-days also.
That is
The calendar
correct.
to which you are referring,
Yes.
it was before we had a half-day professional development afternoons.
Well, here is one. It says students dismissed at noon, professional day. So we did have a couple.
The professional day is the contracted professional day that the teachers get to work on grades.
Well,
That's
here's
different.
one too. Students, staff development students dismissed at noon. So I think they still did have it, just different. But it does say.
And I only counted as a half day. Used to, when we got out at noon, it was a half day.
Yeah, that's what it says. But it says staff. It was for staff development.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
About President's Day?
President's Day.
And not in general, it'll be fun. In here it says the order of makeups, that's how they're listed. So we would apply to use President's Day first with this calendar. We haven't done that in the past?
Well, we actually have.
Okay.
When we had Sandy, Storm Sandy.
Yeah.
We did apply for a day earlier because we missed so many days prior to that. So that's why we've had a makeup day that early, is because if we have an event like that one, and that was, what year? 12, 13, yeah, that's right.
But that's the first day, according to this, that's the first day you'll schedule.
According to this, but again, that can change based on your recommendations.
Yeah, no, I don't mind using President's Day. I think there's some kind of good conversation out there from the public about the idea of using President's Day, and I think we should plan, if we're going to use it, to make sure that that's a special day of education in the schools. It would make sense to me that if you're having school on one of those special days, to plan ahead and say, hey, if we go to school on President's Day, we should figure out how to integrate something about presidential history or whatever into the curriculum. I think a lot of different people in the community said that when they saw that on the schedule, and I think that's a smart idea to prepare for if we're going to use that day first.
Right. We've always called that, I think, appropriate exercises or other instructional ideas for those days. We do it Veterans Day, I think.
Any other changes?
I have another question. We're aware that parent-teacher conferences, we can't have the schools open and then have conferences at night. But it was mentioned, and I'm just curious, is it possible that if the kids would go half a day of school and then have parent conferences the other half, or is that not?
But you still have to get your 7 hours of conferences. So if you did that model, that would have to be over 2 different weeks or 2 different days.
Right, yeah. I was just, because like before, when it was in the evening, it was 2 different evenings. I mean, I know we can't do that now, but years back,
that's correct.
Like it might have been Tuesday of this week and Tuesday the following week, so they weren't the same week.
Okay. Any other changes? All right. Then let's take a motion to approve this. Oh, you got another one. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not.
That's all right.
I'm not done. Let's see what else I have.
Motion for Monica to pass the candy pull.
I can do that much. Cheyenne, did you want some?
While she's looking.
Need some energy there.
Sorry. I lost my train of thought here. I have in January, we come back from winter break. Schools are open the 2nd, and then we have staff development on the 9th, professional day on the 17th. I would like to make the amendment that we eliminate January 9th for the staff development
Okay.
because of having 2 in the same month.
Okay, there's a motion to eliminate January 9th as a staff development 3-hour early dismissal. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion second, we can discuss.
Just one point of clarification. The 17th is professional day.
I said,
So,
okay.
okay, that's professional day. So that's the 91st day that the staff, they work on their grades, because then that's transition into the new semester, okay? So that's not staff development. The staff development day was the 9th. I'm just making clarification for
Yes,
you.
but I just said there was 2. I guess my point was the kids are getting out twice that month for 3-hour dismissals, both for a development for the teachers. That was fine. But you are correct what you said. One was staff, one was professional.
So just a question then. So we would have to have that staff development somewhere. There's no requirement. It's just not.
There's no requirement.
Within the
There's
calendar,
no requirement
you
that we have
to not do that.
May I? We've lost a lot of time with our teachers in our late nights, and we are limited on the amount of time that we have, that building administrators and supervisors have to spend with their teachers. And we have more and more staff development requirements that are pushed down towards us, and we keep getting less and less time with them.
So why would you not put those 2 activities on the same day?
Well,
then you
development. You can't.
Then you lose a student day.
One is the contracted must-do
Get it.
91st
I get
day.
it.
Yeah.
I'll try to think of any other good ideas.
When we, just one more point to Mrs. DeVore's point, when we first started, we did have one every single month. We did, almost for that exact same reason, we do not have one in November because of Thanksgiving break. We've eliminated at least one of our professional development days in November.
And the other point, I think, when the 17th could be, that date could change based on when.
That date almost always changes. Almost always changes, yes. It's a floater. We've tried that a host of different ways also as we've worked through years of the calendar. And I know through our workload committee and also through lots of discussions about substitutes, we've really made an effort not to pull teachers and have substitutes. We know we don't have enough. We know teachers are covering for when we don't have enough subs. So this was a way that we could address that, still have the professional development, and not have to get as many subs, because Mrs. DeVore is right. We are mandated to have a tremendous amount of professional development. We have initiatives that we really feel are important. You heard it tonight in STARS. We've trained in safety care. We've trained these teachers. That all takes time. So my recommendation would be not to eliminate that one.
Another question. What happens on the 21st of November? There's 3-hour dismissal, but then that's it?
That's the day.
That's the day.
Those are the 2 days before Thanksgiving and before.
That's according to the contract,
Yes.
correct? And that's why you said that there's no staff development attached to that.
Right, can't do it then either.
The other thing you have to remember about staff development too is if there is and correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's no school that day, there is no staff development.
Correct.
They're lost.
We've had that.
So no wonder
And we have
you
had
could
that
lose
happen.
3 and 4 staff developments.
Correct.
We have had that.
We have had that.
You could just
We were going to do some mandatory retraining, and we had to postpone that. We still have to do it, but we weren't able. We lost today.
And that's a perfect example of, we had things. First of all, we had it open for principal staff development, and then we had an issue where we were required to retrain every employee in the county. So had we not had that day available, and we had to maneuver things in order to make it available, but we did all that and we got it ready, and then we had a snow day and we lost it. Now we're doing that this week on this staff development on the 15th, and then we already had stuff planned for that day and we had to bump that, so it's a juggling.
Jane, is this the day on the 17th? That's a contracted day too, correct? The professional day is a contracted day.
Yes.
91st?
That's
Yeah.
the work in the room day. they
That
call
one
it.
does move.
It floats,
That's the only
it
one.
floats, but it's
Contract to be the
contracted.
91st day.
Any further questions or discussion on this one? All right. It's been moved and seconded to eliminate the staff development day on January 9th. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed to the motion?
Nay.
Nay.
Well, it's my first time-breaking vote. I vote nay. It will remain on the calendar.
Thank you.
I have just one.
Yes, go ahead.
This is a concern. Like we have, let's see, this year I believe if I'm correct, because we've missed some days of school, which is normal. When students get their report cards, we have parent conferences, let's see, what are they scheduled for? March 29th, I think? Or no, is it the 26th, 29th? What is it?
For the, are you talking about for?
Yes,
are you
for right
talking
now,
this
for right
year?
now. I have a point for the calendar, but it goes, but I believe if I'm correct, when the parents come in for conferences, the third quarter is still going on, so like will they not get their report cards that night, is that correct?
That is correct.
So is there any way, in that case, could we have parent conferences, like the one scheduled in March, like have I don't know if you could write a float date, depending on, because it's hard to give a report totally when you're still in the quarter, you're not done, and you don't have the actual report card to give to them. I don't think that might happen very often, but what?
It does,
Well,
it does
I
happen.
think it's important to.
It does, and because we've had those as days off.
Right, I understand.
Again, we have a lot more flexibility when we have them in the evening. So when we had them as days off, we do have a tremendous difficulty sometimes with the 91st day, floating it around. We've tried it so many different ways. I would certainly be open to maybe making that, or maybe moving the parent conferences. But what we've kind of said this year is it's pretty close.
Well, not this year, but I'm talking
well, yeah, I know,
for the year.
but you mentioned this year. So we actually had talked about moving the parent conference day because we know that we've had 7 snow days. So, I think that it's a possibility. It just makes planning for parents, I think, a little bit more difficult, planning for teachers a little bit more difficult.
But you know what? Another school of thought is that it's a glimpse in time.
Yeah.
So if we're meeting with a parent and if they have an opportunity to still get in, a test or a homework before the end of that term, that also is a positive, right? So, and I know that's the situation we're in right now. That our conferences are held before then the end of the term. So you can look at it that way as well.
Right,
also, I think with our Power School, the way that we keep our reports and grading our students, it's much easier to produce it because it's on a daily basis or close to every day that assignments. It's entered and it's much easier now in the grading system rather than the grade book and now I have to calculate my grades and you know what I mean. So that's another point.
Okay. We looked very closely at that this year when we were looking at moving the snow days in and the every time we have a snow day or a school closure, we've got to move the progress reports up that day. We've got to move the end of the grading period up that day, and then we've got to move the report cards, which is 5 days after the end of the grading period. And in looking at this particular scenario that we were faced with after these days have kind of trickled in, what we have in the end is then we've got the Easter vacation following, but you have that parent conference day on that I think it's a Monday, the 26th, then report cards, or end of the grading is actually going to be the following Wednesday. So just for the reason that Dr. Wilderson expressed, we felt like if I met with you, if I, the teacher, met with you, the mother, and said, Johnny, here's where Johnny is today. He still has a week before the end of the grading period. He still has time to do, and I know probably you are like I was as a mother. By the next week, Johnny would have those assignments done if given the opportunity, right?
Right.
Not always.
Yeah. I would guess as coming at a parent standpoint, when you go and you're used to the teacher actually giving you the report card and you're actually looking at it, it's, yeah, that's mine.
And had we not had those snow days, that would have happened.
But also on that line, talking back to the Power School or the grading system, guaranteed parents know what's on the grades.
But not
before the kids
all,
get
but not all
home.
parents
That
have
is
the
true.
internet, so that
That is
doesn't
true.
affect everybody. True, but thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. Then be good to have a motion to approve the calendar in total with August 20. So it'd be this draft calendar with the first date of August 27th, and the only change then would be the half-day, 3-hour early dismissal on May 29th added. Is there a motion to approve the calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the calendar. And any further discussion?
Mr. Morris, you always do what you did before on the back. You will have the testing schedule. And I do have one question, because we have the new format and we have the old format. Are we putting both of them on the website then, or how do we do that?
The one that has the calendars on the side, it's not web accessible according to our
Okay, so
guidelines.
this is
that
the
one
new,
will go up, yeah, what you're holding up will go on the website.
all right, thank
But
you.
we can send home the ones with the calendar on the side. With the testing on the
Which would
back.
be this right here.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor of the calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And the calendar is approved for 2018-2019.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Yes.
As I shared earlier, according to the waiver, local school boards are required to have one meeting, which is this today, and approve the waiver application.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the waiver application?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Then moved and seconded, Mr. Woods and Dr. Swerber, to approve the waiver application to the state, Maryland State Department of Education. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 3-1, it passes.
I would like to say just one more time, thank you to everybody who gave their comments.
Yeah.
We enjoyed reading them all and valued all the input. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Wilson. RISE Strategic Issues Report.
You want to go back?
I want to go here first.
I'm just doing what it says, Dr. Swerber. Doing what it says.
I'm wondering if this one if it's like this part. Can I think about it?
Can you do 5 minutes break? Can we take a 5-minute recess?
Are we taking a recess?
Okay, 5 minutes.
5-minute recess? Okay, 5-minute recess. 5-minute recess. Thank goodness, because I was going to ask to.
Where are you?
I have been enjoying it.
I got it. And Mrs. Baker.
Thank you. Each board member should have the draft report of the RISE strategic plan. This is a very preliminary report, the identification of strategic issues. And I've laid it out. What I've done is just give a little bit of history of schools at a glance, and then kind of talked about the process of how we've gotten to this point. And then I've included the values that were shared with the administrative team in September, and then kind of where we are on steps 1 through 3 of that document. And then I've included the goals. And then I took each strategic issue that we identified at the last meeting, at the work session, and I tied it to each value and a goal. Some of them have more than one value and more than one goal. And then I just addressed kind of that we have an understanding of this, or things that we've done to mitigate it, like staff recruiting or, course offerings, that kind of thing. So then what I thought was after I think what we're going to do is they'll have a couple of weeks to review this and then prepare any questions. And then I believe we will look at it again in the March meeting, correct? Mm-hmm. And then after that, we can move on to the next step, which is the identifying some strategies to go with each of the strategic issues. So I can easily go back in after we start identifying some strategies and put the strategies right with each strategic issue. And also then be able to tie the strategy to the board values and the board goals. Included a few charts and graphs, and what I told Mr. Paul when I sent it to him for the first draft was, before this document is made public for review, I just cut and paste different charts and graphs. I would like to create those so it looks more consistent as you look at each one of these charts. So this is a very preliminary draft report for your review.
Yeah, so the board members just received this yesterday, so what we're asking is to review it and provide suggestions by February 28th. So suggestions or questions, and then Mrs. Baker and I will meet on March 1st to review those suggestions, make a plan with revisions, and then hopefully have that prior to the March meeting for distribution.
Can we have a set date to keep ourselves on task
for when the board
of when you and should we submit those edits or our thoughts to you?
You can send them to me, and I
I mean to everybody, but I mean that's the plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
February 28th.
Okay.
And then the ultimate goal is you'll meet with Ms. Baker, and it should be able to be at our board meeting in March. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That,
we
it
can
would
have
be
it on the
it would be for
projector
discussion.
for everybody
Yeah, and
to
for
see as
public
we're just
distribution.
okay.
Because we're going to put it out for public comment, similarly to what we did with the calendar.
After our board meeting in March, is that correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to the next item, which is the fiscal year 2019 local funding request.
That's another thing we transfer over, did it? I don't see it. What we're doing now. I mean, we added it. But it's not on here though, right? Sharon didn't get it? Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see it on here.
You might have to
refresh it.
Refresh. It is on here.
I thought I saw it a while ago.
But I think we also received that in our packets as well.
Yes, but I was just saying if it showed up on the,
Yeah, if they're on there, it is on there now.
okay, that was my question.
Okay, so, as when we left on January 30th, after the budget presentation, I did ask that the board consider taking action this evening on the board's request of local government for funding. This includes the maintenance of buffers, the non-exclusion cost projects, as well as the revised capital improvement plan that we presented on the 30th. Are there any questions? So again, maintenance of effort for FY19, as per that calculation, is $27,449,975. Garrett County government is forced to increase the per pupil by 0.2% for the escalator. And again, for the count as of September 30th, we were up 10.75 students. So the non-recurring cost exclusions that we outlined came to $593,200. And then the revised capital that we suggested came to $392,152.
So the amounts you're asking us to approve is the maintenance of effort amount, which is the $27,449,975. Is that right?
Yeah, the maintenance
Plus.
of effort, we don't need to
We don't have to
request.
approve that.
They must
Okay.
fund that.
So we have to approve the other two components. That's what you're saying.
Approve the other two components, but there's also an option that if you would like to request above maintenance of effort, that's the pleasure of the board.
Okay. All right. So these would be the capital or non-recurring cost exclusion recommendations for the $593,200. And so I'll see what the pleasure of the board is, but if there's a motion, we can approve these two either together or separately based on results.
Well, I'll make a motion to get started on it, to get to discussion, to approve both.
Okay. Motion to approve the capital or non-recurring cost exclusion and the revised draft CIP for 2019. Second, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Discussion.
So, the first thing I want to say is I think the one-time capital or non-recurring cost exclusion recommendation, this makes sense for this year, right? And tying that to not asking above maintenance of effort. I wouldn't want the public to take that as me thinking that the legally required minimum right now is enough. I will be in next year revisiting the maintenance of effort number, which I believe, not that we just need the maintenance of effort plus this money this year, we need above maintenance of effort every year. We continue to be underfunded by local government. But that being said, in this case, for this moment, I'm okay with just sending over that requested maintenance of effort and the capital non-recurring cost exclusion. But I will be prepared to revisit that next time.
Other discussion or questions?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate the comment I made, I think, last month. As I look at the recommendations from Mr. Swift and central office staff, I don't disagree with any of them, other than it behooves us to get to a point sooner than later as to what is our footprint in Garrett County with our educational system. Because as I look at some of the schools, they may or may not be footprints. I don't know what we're trying to do as a system. But every time that we continue to put funds in schools, we need to think: is that the best use of our money for that particular school? Yes or no?
I just want to add that I agree with both of you. We certainly, as an administrative team, have talked about the footprint, and Mr. Swift does struggle with that when he puts together that CIP. And Dr. Sorber, to your point, it's in my job description to advocate for the needs of the school system, and I would absolutely reiterate that. I think when you look at the funding formula and how we are funded, that the maintenance of effort is the minimum. We had an excellent presentation this evening of STARS. That is grant funded, but that is something that we feel has been very successful so far. But it takes money to run that program, and that's just one example. But we have been recognized by the state for the way that we have maintained our buildings. I don't know that will continue without some additional funding at some point. So.
Can I just want to add a comment to Mr. Woods. Mr. Woods was saying. Who are you? When we began the conversation about the CIP in the past, we were engaged in the strategic planning process. We've had a good opportunity before us with the budget kind of carryover, right? That we gained some breathing room.
Correct, right.
Before we rushed into some of these decisions. And I'm feeling a lot better than I did when we saw the CIP before, because at least for me, I had to get to a better place to understand, and I'm still learning about what are the situations in front of us, and thinking about footprint, thinking about our educational goals, but I think this CIP for 2018-2019 is smart in its hesitancy in not plowing forward with some really big projects into areas that we may regret. I don't know where things are going to go, but I think this plan, from my perspective, it gives us there's investments that make sense for the 2018-2019 that we have to do. It gives us time to think about the whole plan. It has to think about our buildings moving forward, and formulate our strategy over the next few months and beyond. So just to piggyback on what Tom said.
So I'll go next. Kind of towards what you just said about the CIP, I'm looking at it, and I'd be okay to approve what we have on there for 2018, 2019, but until we're done with our RISE plan and we know what all you just said, I'd rather not okay any of the other items at this time. I'm okay for 18, 19 until we know for sure where our footprints are going to be, like you were saying. And my other concern, the budget. We had a slight, and I thank everybody that put all the time work into the budget. The information that we've got, and I know that it's important that we send it over to the commissioners, the amount that we're requesting. And what we had on there was a maintenance of effort. I'm very concerned about asking for the maintenance of effort for numerous reasons. One is the behavior that we need to address, which we're doing well with the STARS program, but we're seeing more and more of it, which requires more staff, affects the busing, different things, unknown. Also, we have some retirements in some of the positions. We were told probably will be filled through attrition. That's concerning because every year since I've been on the board, and I know sometimes it's the time to do it. I realize that with some positions, but some positions at times over the years just have concerned me. When every year it seems like we keep cutting and cutting our staff. I do know that we do, this year you said we had 10.75 more students than last year, which that's wonderful. And I know people think you have less enrollment, you need less teachers, but that's kind of a hard decision there. So I'm not sure the amount that we need to ask because we don't actually, it's not been the time to present the entire budget to us to see like page for page and to understand it, but I'm not for the maintenance of effort. I would like to see more, but I can't say the dollar amount not knowing, having much information to go on. And again, the CIP, I'm for sending over 2018-19. And the rest of it, I think it's kind of hard to, I mean, it might be all okay, but the years we have and the items until we do the entire, we know where we're going from the RISE plan. That's my thoughts.
And this is a planning document, so
True.
Obviously the items that are to start planning in FY20, you would have adequate time in June and July prior to those projects being approved and moving forward on them.
But I see I have the first review we had 7/11/17, and the second review of it 8/8/2017. And then the new one we just got January 26/18. Like some things we have in different they've moved different, and of course,
Well, and that was by design. We revised it to try to streamline the items that needed to get done due to urgency or due to the fact that we knew that building was going to be our footprint, regardless of how the strategic plan.
Right.
So, yes, there is
some change.
There is a change, yes. That's why it's...
I mean, the top one still remained the same. So the middle school entrance office suite that we've had on there for time.
Any questions or comments?
Is Monica proposing an amendment, either of those 2 points, or?
Are you proposing amendment?
I guess I am, yes.
What's the amendment?
The first one would be to ask for more than maintenance of effort from the county commissioners. But I don't know, it's hard to say a dollar amount when I don't know just a short part of the budget that we've been presented and circumstances.
I don't know. I would have to have a recommendation on
No,
that.
and I guess here's the difficult position for you all, the central office staff too, is do we ask for what our needs are, or do we ask for what we think we're going to get?
Correct.
You know, that in a nutshell, that's what we're talking about here. And you know what should be our guiding principles to guide us, and I know it's a difficult situation for all of us. And I'm sure it's difficult for commissioners as well. But you know, we were elected to take care of the students of this county, to make sure that they get the best education possible in the best facilities possible, and will maintenance of effort do that for us this year?
Yeah, you know, I think when I reflect on last year, just in terms of kind of how the process works, just to be transparent, I think us asking for a very large number over maintenance of effort, which probably calculating the possibilities was not something we were going to get at that level. So I think, you know, if I was in this case supporting, you know, us putting together something above maintenance of effort, you know, I think it would be interesting to consider maybe something more politically attainable. I would hate to think the commissioners want to give us a 0.5% bump, but we're not giving them the opportunity. I mean, maybe they're hungry to give us just a little bit more in maintenance of effort, and we won't get it if we don't ask. That might be a different conversation than asking for several $1 million more. That might just, that conversation doesn't go very well. But I don't know what, again, I think Matt's right. I think we're kind of floating around numbers. I think we would need kind of a concrete recommendation on what that, if that's something we're interested in, or if you think that there's some number in addition. I mean, maybe you don't. I mean, if this is what you think is the best ask for us to meet our needs this year, if you think there's a slight percentage increase in maintenance of effort that we should, or whatever, that we should ask for, then now's the time.
Okay, so on the non-recurring for the capital, that's something that we haven't received in the past. And those are just special projects that, I mean, have they indicated to us that they will they'll cover some non-recurring, or are we just going for?
We have had non-recurring in the past.
Yes, we've had
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Yes.
We actually, I think they approved about 450, and the state didn't approve about 20 something of that. So can I answer kind of Dr. Sorber and Ms. Siebold at the same time? I know that we haven't, of course, we haven't met with the commissioners either, but I do know that in your discussions with their finance director, you have agreed on a figure that's maintenance of effort, correct?
Yes.
Based on our enrollment, you get a feeling from him that they're not open to additional dollars, correct? That they
For maintenance of effort.
above maintenance of effort.
Not above maintenance of effort.
Yes. But I think you asked me at the last meeting, why we were recommending some capital projects outside of that, or non-recurring that aren't capital. The textbooks was one that we used the year that we got the 428. And I said at that time, I know that they have approved several projects at the college. So my feeling is that they would be open to some additional capital projects, especially the way that we've laid them out, because we know until we have a complete strategic plan, we're going to send over this that says, we are planning for our capital, and we are planning that each school, but the ones that, that we have prioritized as the highest, that they know that those are probably the most important things that we need at this time. I don't know. I just I get a feeling that if we, and again, I agree. I think that we could certainly put something together, but we've done that. We did that last year, and we gave you 2 other options, which included 2 other additional requests. Made a presentation and told them exactly why we needed the additional funding, and still received maintenance of effort. So, I think that's why when we started this year's budget, and we kind of, we did have some of the funding to be able to do it this year. That's why we went the route of we've gotten a feeling from them just based on some discussions that that's what we're going to get. But that they may be open for some outside projects that they don't have to fund year after year after year.
Do you have
When we submit the non-reoccurring to the commissioners, are we bound to that line item? In other words, if we say $12,000 to replace the bell system at Southern Middle School, we are bound to do that. That's what we have to do with the money.
We are. What happens is actually the local government, Mr. Weeks's group it actually submits the form on our behalf. We do not.
Right.
And to the extent that it's approved, they tell them it's approved, and then I hope they tell us, and then I'm trying to find out too. So really, it has to be what we say it's going to be, because MSDE does look at every single project and approves or doesn't approve them. So, but it becomes part of the operating budget. These projects would. So.
Did you want to make a motion or?
No, I was just mentioning the fact that there was some additional through the non-recurring over maintenance of effort.
Monica, did you have something else?
Do you know on the budget that's being worked on, with either one of the tracks in there to be worked on? Do you know? No?
Okay. Any other questions? Discussion? Okay, so the motion is to approve the fiscal year 2019 capital and non-recurring cost exclusion recommendations and the draft 2019 CIP summary. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
3-1 is approved.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Ms. Spicer, for a lot of hard work, even preparing the request.
All right, we're gonna go back up to policies and procedures now. Policies and procedures, G, is the IHOA, leaving school for curricular, co-curricular, or extracurricular events. This is procedure, and Mrs. DeVore.
So this is coming to you for the second time, and again, minor changes, but the verbiage, basically we're asking that the superintendent, that the field trips that are over 200 miles be approved by the superintendent 1 month prior to the trip. Previously it said approved by the Board of Education 1 month prior to the trip.
Okay.
The only other change in that was the change in my title.
Okay. So this is a procedure, which is administrative. Unless the board has objections or something that they would like to change. Discussion or questions?
I still have concerns.
Okay.
I still have the thought that the more eyes that look at it, and the fact that we are sending children, allowing them to go on trips, and that is our responsibility, their safety. I would still like to feel that the board should have a part in that decision.
We first started talking about this many months ago. I think it was October when it came up. I think I've shared my opinions with you on this. One big problem that we continuously came up with, though, were when we had the field trips come up between meetings. And we had the open meetings problem that would occur because, there's no good way to approve it unless we're going to convene a special meeting. So I think that's what officially started our discussions of this, I believe, the October meeting. And I think maybe Mr. Wood suggested that this be handed to the superintendent. By way of history, when we reviewed this, I reviewed several counties. I believe that Mrs. DeVore reviewed all counties, that no one else requires no other county has the board looking at this. It also concerns me if we have to talk about this in public session. I'm not real thrilled about talking about overnight field trips in a public session. Now, Mrs. Siebel, I totally defer to you because I know you've been here many more years than me and probably been approved field trips I went on.
Yes, I probably did, as a matter of fact.
The ice is thin, Mr. Slade.
Yes, really. Yes,
You might want to stop now.
I meant that purely complimentary.
Well, thank you very much.
But it just concerns me that when we start talking about field trips, I don't know who's watching this on the screen, and it worries me if the wrong person's watching. I don't want to give away that kind of information. Those are my big concerns. The in-between meetings, not wanting to talk about it in public meetings. From a liability standpoint, I don't think it makes a difference. I agree with you. Safety's paramount. Nothing more important to any of us than keeping our kids safe. From a liability standpoint, I think we're protected or equally exposed, regardless of whether you all approve or Mrs. Baker or Mrs. DeVore or someone else makes the approval.
Well, if my experience had been all positive or even a little negative, I've just had real concerns in the past, and there has been times that things have needed to be checked into, arrangements have needed to be changed, and things like that. And I feel responsible for those things. And I just, this is a procedure where we don't vote on it, but I just want to make that statement.
One thing I think I brought up when we talked about this last, or maybe, I forgot we talked about it so much, but in your history of it, yes, it was part of the in-between meetings, but a little more history of it, some of the board's issue has been the timing of it. It's not just that stuff happened in between meetings. It's some that information wasn't given as quickly as possible. And I think I made the comment that I think this procedure still needs more work in addition to who's just looking at it. It still, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it still seems like a lot of these trips happen every year and we know when they're happening. And if we had 2 approval dates, maybe 2's too few, but there was like a fall approval date and a spring approval date where they all had to be in, they were all cleared well ahead of time, then the superintendent could make those approvals. She could give the share information necessary with the board if there's any issue. So I would still encourage to look at this, because it's not just looking at it. It seemed like some of the issue has been that people are just not getting stuff in, and that no matter who looks at it, we've had issues or the potential for issues of people going on trips before any eyes were on it. So I want to make sure we get that cleaned up no matter what eyes are on it.
Even though the superintendent would be the person approving, doesn't mean that you can't share that information with us upon your approval. Correct?
Correct.
I mean, you can send that to us
As I did.
via email. And so that each of us can look to see if we see something that maybe necessitates a phone call to you. Did you see maybe this wasn't correct?
Correct. And I just want to add, Ms. Siebold, I absolutely agree. I take student safety very, very seriously. And I think in my tenure as superintendent, I have shown that I do care very much about the safety of our students. But if you look, principals are responsible, that it ties to the curriculum. Principals are responsible to make sure that all the travel arrangements. We put a lot on our principals and our directors because they are the ones that know the most about the trip. And I will admit, there are times when it doesn't get in a timely fashion. But I think that internally needs to be done. And Mrs. DeVore and I have made a commitment to address it at A&S with the principals, who then need to address it with their teachers to make sure. There are recurring trips. But we talked about it with this past weekend. We had somebody qualify on a Thursday, and they're leaving the very next day. And, we could have had, there were several teams, another Garrett County team, so if they all put those in, we would be discussing or approving things that may or may not happen. This board also has asked for, costs of hotels, that kind of thing. Well, there's a kind of a catch-22 there where they don't book anything. So they don't, because it's not approved yet, but they really don't know how much it's going to cost because they get it approved first. So I think those things, to your point, Dr. Sorber, need to be cleaned up internally, but I don't necessarily think it's a matter of bringing them here. And certainly to talk about them, we have a lot of other, strategic planning and budgeting that I think the time is now to leave the overnight trips to the superintendent approval with the assurance that we will continue to monitor and make sure that things are brought in a timely fashion.
But my concerns are not the timely fashion. My concerns are the appropriate chaperones.
Absolutely.
I mean, people have signed off on things, and it's come all the way through the trail and gotten to us, and it's not appropriate.
Right.
And people going on trips that are not students. I mean, that's gone all the way up the line too and come to us in the past. So, we have to make sure that the trip, and we did tighten up on that by saying that it does need to be tied to the curriculum.
Correct.
That was to try, because it was pretty much out of control. And hopefully with the changes that we've put on it as far as tied to the curriculum, having to have chaperones, ladies chaperones, if there's girls on the trip, which with JROTC and things like that, you have to make sure because it was all boys, now it is boys and girls. So those type of things that would be liable to us if they were not, if people weren't looking at that type. So just, I just hope that is something that's considered, not just the timeliness of it, but that it is appropriate. what is being done for safety.
And I do think, at least initially, you share those overnight trips with us. Once you approve them, scan them and share them with us. Just as a precaution for a while. I don't see anything wrong with doing that.
Certainly. Thank you.
And I remember a discussion, when the gentleman had said it before, what if you're out of town, say, I don't know, New York or somewhere, what was brought to the table is very valuable, like the staff, the teacher who's responsible for the soldier, or the students there, are they trained if there is a crisis, some situation happens? Like, I think we need, and we were told they were, but I would feel more comfortable also if that was also put in.
Do you want to speak to
here.
that? Because we've met on that, we've talked about that. Do you want to speak to that at all? Our plan for, we want to share that with principals?
Right, we're gonna do that through A&S, and just, we didn't write it into the policy, but we were going to do that through our principals at A&S.
But we can certainly, we can certainly look for a place that it would be, yeah.
I agree. Especially in this day and age.
Right.
Well, so.
It should be a part of the procedure that when they're going overnight, they know what the emergency procedures are.
Well, even if it's not overnight, I mean, sometimes they go down and back in Baltimore in one day, or Pittsburgh, or, other places. I mean, nowadays, it doesn't have to be Baltimore or Washington to be a dangerous area.
Well, right.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Even what one of the gentlemen had said before, which was said a minute ago, like different sports and events, you're going to have them. Like fall, you do this and this, winter this, spring, and it would even be good to have something in here to put them in advance. You will do this and this, and then if they course win, you go on to championship nationals. That's understandable. You don't make that request for the field trip to see how you.
We actually do that now. The athletic director sends in all of the fall sports at one time. Everything comes at the same time. All of the winter sports come at the same time. They don't come here because most of them aren't overnight, but we do that now.
Okay, so sounds like we'll go with that for now, but then there will be some changes.
I will share it with you.
The change we brought to us then?
Yes, we'll
Yeah, they'll review.
I'm gonna put some notes, emergency procedures, that kind of thing. We'll add.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. New business, number 6A, audit firm selection. Mrs. Switzer's.
So tonight, I'm recommending that the board approve to retain the Red Haver Group for the FY 2018 audit. When I contacted them, they are prepared to hold their rates on our single audit and our basic audit. There will be an increase for the implementation of GASB 75, which is $2,500, which is when we book our entire OPEB liability. So that is the price that they are charging all three of the government, the Garrett College and Garrett County government. It's the same amount. So.
Is that something we bid, or we just wait for somebody to say, I want to do it?
We have not bid it. We do have, next year, we would have the opportunity to piggyback off of the county's bid if we wish. The county had considered rebidding because their 5-year contract was up, but because the Red Haver Group didn't increase their rates, they decided to just hold off for 1 more year. Unfortunately, we don't have the staff to be able to prepare an RFP ourselves. So our best opportunity would be to piggyback off of the county.
Yeah, I think they do a wonderful job. No way that I think we shouldn't use them. I just wondered what the process was.
Right. Well, and that's a good point, because it is a material amount of money that we're spending with them. But as Ms. Siebold has brought up in the past, they're a local firm, and there are not arguably many firms locally that could handle our audit, so.
Is there a motion to approve the Rhoda Huber Group PC as the board's auditor? So moved. Motion by Monica. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Woods. All right. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the Rhoda Huber Group PC as the board's auditor. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. It is approved. The Rhoda Huber Group are the auditors. Okay. Field trip requests, we no longer have need for that based on the change in procedure. Student board member report is only like 2 hours and 35 minutes later, but hey, we're here.
She's already graduated.
Oh my, we'll have to mail it in.
So Northern Middle School is currently holding their annual Drive for Heart, where they are collecting items such as Q-tips and paper towels. They are also beginning their Relay for Life teams in each grade. They do annually. Northern High School is having a Valentine's Day fundraiser where students can purchase paper hearts, write kind messages on them, and they'll be posted around the school. Southern Middle School is working on petitioning for a clear water bottle policy in their school. They currently are not allowed to have water bottles in their classrooms, so they're petitioning for that policy to be in effect. They're also planning a Valentine's Day fundraiser, a March dance, and are restarting their recycling program. Southern High School recently held their annual dress swap, where we had our greatest participation ever. And we're also planning winter homecoming as well as a possible spring blood drive. In the past month, GCASE sent a group of students to Maryland Leadership Workshops at Frostburg State University, where we got to listen to 3 different workshops on diversity, public speaking, and community, which were all wonderful workshops. We are also coordinating a lip balm drive to support MASC's charity for this year, Finish Sarcoma. And lastly, we're planning our March General Assembly meeting, where we will be holding officer elections, and that will most likely be taking place at Northern High School. And whenever I have a definite date for that, I will let you all know. Thank you.
Thank you. Comment? Yeah.
President. Not only do I always look forward to Cheyenne's updates, as evidence from her participation in our discussion over the calendar tonight, Cheyenne is a valued member of our a valuable participant in our board deliberations, who continues to impress me with her contributions.
I appreciate that.
You said Northern Middle School is collecting the Q-tips and paper towels? So that's Northern Middle.
Yes.
Do you know how long that goes to?
I don't, but I can find that out for you.
And then you said Southern High School is collecting lip balm?
All of GCASE is collecting lip balms. The way each year MASC selects a charity, and this year it's Finish Sarcoma, and they have assigned each county a specific item to bring to convention this year, and Garrett County was given lip balm.
So like chapstick?
Correct.
And how long are you collecting that for?
That will be until convention, which is like the second weekend in April.
Okay, so okay, that's good.
We're currently, the way we're planning on going about this drive is to get sponsors from businesses, and we're going to purchase bulk packages of lip balm that don't have labels on them, and then the business sponsors will print out labels and have the business name on there. And
that's a good idea.
Are you also taking other donations, like a branded lip balm?
Yes.
Let's do like a surplus of lip balm.
Yes.
We might. Is there a preference?
No, it's that was just the way we thought we could get the most donations, but absolutely, I do believe the middle schools are possibly doing drives that are branded lip balms that whoever brings in the most will receive some sort of incentives, so.
And this is like a tube of chapstick or that stuff that comes in the little round
Yes, like
ball.
we're not picky.
So any business
You need a
can
definition on that.
I've just rated my wife supplies of lip balm, unopened lip balm.
That we do prefer unopened lip balm.
Any other questions or
Thank you.
comments? Thank you, Cheyenne. Board member updates. We did get the email from Mabe regarding the survey for the strategic plan. I think they want responses on that from by February 21st. So if you have a chance to do that. And we've got a couple other emails as far as legislative update recently, so keep up with those things. And other board activities or things I'd like to mention?
Do we have anybody going to the MAPE, the day, the legislative day?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm going to go, Matthew said I could sign up for the open meetings training in May.
Parliamentary procedure.
If anyone wanted to go along, I'd be very happy to have company in the car.
I'm going to look at my calendar, maybe go with you. I attended it the last time, and it's very good. Different questions each time. Good presenter, too.
Anything else? I appreciate that. We do have some informational items for school activities and home and school connections, and we also have the annual report and education superlatives. Did you want to say anything about that?
Well, I just, yes, I do, actually. I wanted to thank Mr. Morris, who puts this together for us each year. It's a tremendous amount of work, and as you can see, it's divided into a report on the entire district, and then, the way it's put together, each school can make like a trifold for their school. He also, each year changes the artwork and changes the, the information that principals submit about what they're doing in their buildings and some successes that they've had. So I just want to encourage you to read this and thank Mr. Morris for putting it together for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I enjoy all the photos and artwork. It's amazing.
Thank you. All right. That concludes our business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
There is.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
There is a second.
There's a second. So, Dr. Swerber, Mrs. Seabold, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Heartily. Okay. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.